come on, you piece of... Stop wailing. Hey! Hi, how are you guys? Sorry, I was adjusting the camera because I wanted to wiggle around. What are you doing? What are you... It's fine. The ring light's being dumb. Hello, how are you all? Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? 2. Yes. 2. I like that how that's become the universal signal for yes, we can hear you. And that epic music, yeah. I got some real vibe stuff going on over here. Is the music too loud? Should I turn it down? Yeah. I love this album. Low key, there's no lyrics. It's just like epic, like I'm gonna ride into battle on a dragon level stuff. I really love it whenever it rains or it's like storming really bad and I have to drive in it. I will drive in a thunderstorm to that shit. It makes me feel like I could die any minute. It's great. Ah, thank you. Yeah, how is everyone? Tell me how your week is going. Okay, music's great. Awesome. Let me know if it gets too loud, because it does have some peaks in there. Hi, how are you? Glad everybody could make it. Where's Simfredanks? Is Simfredanks in here yet? Tanya Ita's in here. That's awesome. Slimes is in here. Finn, so glad you could make it. Got to play the coolest game this weekend. What game? Can it be Tuesday yet? Hey, I did have a good day. I didn't get a lot done because, well, you know, plans fell through and that happens. So don't stress yourself out about it. But I'm glad you're here. Ready for story time? Yes, excellent. You've been sitting here? Oh, crap. Oh, dang. I'm so sorry. I'm on time. For real, though. Did I eat? Okay. Yes. Yes, I ate. Fun story. Danks woke up today and chose chaos. Just so you know, technically I have 2 partners. We're polyamorous. So it's me, Danks, and Sarah. And, Danks woke up. I was out. I did not fall asleep until noon, so I had a nap. But apparently, Danks was like, I'm hungry, but only for crab rangoon. If I'm gonna eat today, it's gonna be crab rangoon. So Sarah takes him to get crab rangoon, and they come back with like 6 orders of crab rangoon. So there are bags, whole bags of just crab rangoon. They didn't get any of the food. I was like, did you get any like protein or anything? No, just crab rangoon. So I had about half a bag of crab rangoons before I went. I'm not kidding. I was like, why is there crab rangoon? I'm in the kitchen getting my coffee and I'm like, what is happening? I was like, why are there so many bags of crab rangoon? And Nicky was like, oh, I did that. I was like, you did what? And he was like, I got hungry. And I told Sarah the only thing I was going to eat today was crab rangoon. So he took me and get some to get like 4 orders of crab rangoon. I was like, and he was like, so you can have some if you want. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks. Good plan. Just crab rangoon. 4 orders of fries tofu from the Thai place. Now you're online and just patiently wait until Tuesday. You mean your pronouns? Yeah, tell me your pronouns. I should know everybody's pronouns. When in doubt, I always use they, them, just because I don't want to be disrespectful. But a full food group pyramid, oh my god. I was like, really? Like, oh my god. So Denki comes in. Nodi made us cookies just to make us cookies. And they came in there and they were like, I'm gonna need Nodi to quit their job and make me cookies full time. I was like, all right, I'll let them know you're offering full-time employment as baker. She, they. Mostly they. Got it. Crab rangoon it's really just like cream cheese, shredded crab, and like a little wonton wrapper, and it's not the most nutritious thing in the world. She, they, mostly she. Hello, they, them, she, they. Awesome. We get a pronouns roll in the comments. Love it. Like the inside of sushi, they do use cream cheese a lot, and just it's not even like it's less crab than that too. Like when you get crab in a sushi roll, I guarantee you're getting more crab in a sushi roll than you are in crab rangoon. Yeah, Finn, I knew your pronouns. I was pretty sure. She, her, they, them. She, her. Awesome. Yes! Where is Simferdanks? Simferdanks here? Simferdanks joining us? Simferdanks late? It's fine. They have every right to do vape trades. I don't know if my air's on. I can do one. I'd have to move the camera. I'm not sure I can get it back in this position. Dinks is taking a nap. He like crashed after he ate a bunch of crab rangoon. So please what? What is my favorite anime? That's a hard one. Witch Hunter Robin or Death Parade? Probably. I really like Death Parade. Thank you. I am tired. It's not far off from the mark. Passing out. You're here though. Have to work at 4. Dad, go to bed. Dad, why? Witch Hunter Robin. Yeah, the anime that came on Adult Swim in the 90s and nobody remembers. Yeah, that's a deep cut for real. I was talking to somebody about it the other day. I was like, Witch Hunter Robin came on. It was on the same lineup as Inuyasha. It just came on 3 hours later when no one was up. Yay. Low-key, I was considering, I'm considering doing a cosplay that, one, not only has no one has any demand for it, no one even knows what it is, and I was just gonna be a whole gremlin and not tell, and I wasn't gonna put it in the tags or anything. I'm just gonna see which people get it. What do I do when I'm not on TikTok? I read. I've been editing footage a lot lately. Thorny was the first to notice in the middle of the night, I might add, that I put chapter 3 up on YouTube because I had to re-record chapter 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I have 4 sitting on my computer right now. I'm gonna wait until after I upload this live to see if I can't upload 4. It might be sometime tomorrow because it takes a while to upload anything on YouTube. It takes like 20 minutes just to get it to get in gear. And that's if TikTok doesn't give me any trouble with downloading the live. Which it frequently does. So it takes me a bit to get it. But I have chapter 4 sitting on my computer hard drive right now. Just waiting to be uploaded. So that's good. I wanted to edit it a little bit more, but I don't think I'm going to get the time. And I am sick of hearing my own voice. Oh, of course I do. Um, hello. Yeah, pretty much everybody here does. If they don't, they're not invited to story time. It's fine if you're straight, but if you're mean or homophobic to anybody in this comment section, I will boot you. You see in the morning when yeah. I have chapter 4 sitting in there, and like, I honestly work all night trying to get it downloaded from TikTok, because you have to babysit it. When you're downloading the live on TikTok, it'll say it's downloading, but if that screen locks, it's gone. You'll open your screen again and it'll be like, couldn't download live or whatever, or it'll say it's downloaded, but then you'll go to play it and it'll give you an error. So you have to sit there and babysit it with your screen unlocked, and it takes like 30 to 45 minutes to do. So I'm just sitting there with my phone open, just like watching it the entire time, holding my phone, and you gotta sit with it. So it takes a hot minute, and sometimes I'll be trying to do something and I'll be like, I can do this and babysit my phone screen at the same time, and then I will not do that thing, and it will not get downloaded. I'll be doing the dishes and I'll look over and it'll be like grayed over, just about to lock, and I'm like, no, and then I'll go and touch the screen, it's already locked. Happens all the time. Yeah, no. And I'm not a big, regardless of like my presence on TikTok, I don't sit and Finn and everybody else who's in the Discord knows this. I don't babysit my phone. Like, I'll set it down and I won't look at it for hours. I am too busy for that. I work 4 days out of the week. I'm mostly nocturnal. I get most of my crap done in the middle of the night, and so that's when I'm normally on my phone. I'll respond at 3 in the morning. I'll put my phone down, start doing laundry, and won't realize that someone's texting me back until the next day when I'm using my phone at work. Man, you missed it, Simp for Danks. We had a whole conversation about this, but yes, I did. I ate a bunch of crab rangoons. Ooh, link is in the profile, in the link tree in my profile. There's a Discord. You can join the Discord and not chat with me until 3 in the morning. That's when I'm most active. But there's Crimson's in there. Finn made it. So yeah, Thorny's in there. It's a fun time. I have water right here in my brand new cup, actually. Someone gave me this cup. It has a cat on it. It's my new favorite cup. I also have my coffee over here and the mug that Lady Aoife got me. It is really rich. You can't have a whole lot of them, but like, I've had like 5 because I didn't eat, and I had to do this live, and then I was like, crab rangoon it is. I know, I do too. It's my favorite mug, honest to God. I just love it. This little cat, it gives Dad anxiety because he was like, the ears. The ears stick up from the cup, and I'm like, yeah, they're so cute. It's a cat. It's a cat. Okay. There's espresso in here. I made a latte earlier. Okay. I think it turned out pretty well, but it's been sitting for a hot minute, so the foam is all gone. I know. Oh, Lady Aoife got me this mug, and I've never gotten such habitual use out of a personal item. Look at him. He's perfect. Yeah, you do. You gotta eat, man. But yeah, so if anybody's keeping up to date on the YouTube, Chapter 4 will be up soon. And I still have about half the recording for 5 and 6. I'm just gonna be honest. I've been waiting for a return on that audition, and have never been more sick of hearing my own voice. Gets really tiring after a while. Okay, that sounds like it slaps though. Spinach chicken noodle soup. Do you have a Simp for Danks, do you have like a safe food? Danky has a safe food. That's what I'm asking. Like, they'll habitually only eat like the same food for like sometimes weeks, where it's just like, this is the only thing I can eat that makes me feel safe. And up until today, when they got like multiple orders of crab rangoon, it was for some reason sun chips and macaroni salad, which strange, but worked really well. I don't know what the deal was with that, but they go through safe foods every now and again. And if you have a safe food, Doritos, get bags of Doritos. Even if it's not healthy or whatever, it's still food. That's what I tell Thanks anyway. Broth from chicken bones for soup later. Ooh, making your own stock is admirable. And also, that's what we do. We'll just freeze stock. Yeah, no, like they'll just take a sun shit and use it like a scoop. And like macaroni salad is a dip. And their safe food will change like periodically. Like they'll eat the same thing for weeks and then they're like, I can't eat this anymore. Now my new thing is tuna. And then yeah, no. Chocolate or mint Oreo cookies. That's a good one. I like mint Oreos. I don't know a whole lot of people that like the novelty Oreos, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't like all of them. But some of them work. Yours eggs. Spaghetti is your safe food. Spaghetti. Spaghetti's a big comfort food. Milano cookies, I love those. Granted, I'm not a picky eater. I am not a picky eater. I'll have stuff that I'll crave, but I don't really need like a safe food. But like, my one habitual thing that I like need every day is coffee. Like I can't go through my day without it. Like, if you try and make me, we're going to have a bad time. I'm going to end up with a headache by 2, a migraine by 5, and we're all going to have a bad time. But I don't have like a safe food. Like, I don't really have anything that makes me feel uncomfortable. I'll eat anything. So like, or I'll at least try anything once. So even if I don't like it, I'm like, but I'm never particularly grossed out. But they have a thing about SpaghettiOs too, because they don't like holes and things. Whoa, no, sorry. There was a pop-up on here. I might need to plug this in before I get started, just to make sure that in case. I haven't had a problem since I stopped making the event lives. I haven't had a problem with downloading the live. It's given me like a bit of trouble, but nothing like, like technical error message that it was giving me. I just have to babysit it, which is annoying, but it's not a problem. But come on. All right. I thought I was already plugged in, to be honest with you. So, sorry about that. So, safe foods are what you gravitate towards when you're dealing with depression and big sad. That would track. You have a question. What's your question? If it's too personal, I reserve the right to not answer. Same if you want breakfast or at least coffee. Yeah, no, I'll lose it. Can you tell me something? I mean, sure. You can tell me things. Yeah, safe food was discontinued. Whoa, what's safe food? Oh, the gauges? I love these. These are new. So you gotta go? Oh, well, I'm sorry. You can't stay, but I get it. What was it? Earrings? I don't have... What? Am I wearing earrings? Oh, no, I'm not. Okay. My ears are pierced up here, but I didn't think I had anything. How many tattoos do I have? One, 2, 3, 4. 4? 4. 5. Oof. Wait, I'm missing one. I think it's 5 because I think I'm missing one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I have another one or did I imagine that? 4. Oh God, I forget they're there. You don't understand. After you've been like tattooed in places you can't even see a whole lot, you forget they're there. The other day, I have one on my thigh, and I forgot about it until I took my pants off the other day, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" I thought I had gotten something on my leg, and I was like, "That's your tattoo." I was like, "Oh, I forgot I got that." So I don't know. I have the one on my neck, and I have the one right here. I forget I have that one too. Sometimes I'll like push my sleeves up, and I'm like, there's a whole tattoo there. And then I have 3, 4. There's 1 or 2 on my back. I don't remember. This is terrible. I should remember these. Granted, I try to block some of them out because a lot of them are Harry Potter tattoos. And I'll forget I have them until someone calls me out on it. And I don't regret getting them because at the time I wanted them and I still like Harry Potter, but J.K. Rowling's a TERF and I don't want people to think I support her, but like, I guess it doesn't really matter. If I'm happy with what I'm wearing, then it doesn't really... Someone's adding more while I sleep. I wouldn't put it past Danks to do that. They got a stick and poke tattoo. No. No, I think I have 4. I have 6 piercings. Maybe that's what I was talking about. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Maybe I just forgot how many tattoos I have, which is always plausible because I can't even fully remember right now. Yeah, not the stick and poke. Yeah, no. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I wouldn't be able to sleep through that. No, yeah, do that. I hope you feel better. But yeah, if I messed up the amount of piercings I have, or the amount of tattoos I have, I'm very sorry. I don't always remember. I know, I have 6 piercings still, so that's the thing. Hey, Insomniac, you're here. So glad to see you. How long have you been here and I haven't noticed? This is upsetting. I feel like I should know when you come in. The gang's all here. That means we can start. I've low-key been waiting for the core, like, 6, 7 of you that normally show up so that I see your names, so that I know when I can start. Because I'm like, I don't want to start without my core people. Low-key, I'm like, those 7 people, they gotta be here. Everyone else may not know what's happening, but they will, and I'm gonna make sure my people are here. She got out into the barn. Barn cat for the win. Yeah, you're one, Finn. Finn, T Galaxy, Insomniac, Thorny, Lady Aoife, yeah, just Crimson. I gotta make sure you're all here. I gotta make sure you're here. Sip for Danks. I gotta make sure y'all are here. Now, I do appreciate when you let me know beforehand that you may not be coming. Like, I know Finn said he couldn't make a whole one. And then I knew Simp for Danks fell asleep one time. So I kind of, like, you know, you bought the book and caught up on what you missed. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you could join us. We're going to read here in a minute. I just wanted to make sure all the core people were here. And I'm glad that you're caught up on everything. The amount of people that have bought the book and started reading it just because of this just floors me, and like also makes me feel like we have an unofficial book club of sorts. So that's nice. Also, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. What are we reading? We have been reading for the past several weeks Johannes, Cabal, the Necromancer. Now, we are on the tail end of this book, actually. So if you don't know what's going on, I don't know what to tell you. There's recaps on my TikTok every Wednesday. I think I have them labeled. But every Wednesday I'll do the recaps, and they are labeled in the captions. The recaps are. And we are on chapter 13. We're going to read chapter 13 and 14 today. And then we only have one more week left of this book. So, Shinzo Book Club. Great hashtag. Love it. Having a great time. But yeah, it's sort of like a weird little unofficial book club that we've all had. You're gonna make more soup. Yeah, everybody go get your soup or your coffee or your tea or whatever you want. I'm gonna hit myself in the face with a cat spoon. And we're gonna get started. I'm low-key excited. And you know what? This isn't even the end. This isn't even the end. You guys, there's so much more Johannes content out there. So I want to preface that. We're going to have so much to do. I'm debating on reading the short stories as singles, or if I want to double them up in some cases where I can, because Blustery Day is pretty short. But Exit Demon King is like a mini novella. So I'm like, should I do those together? Should I take a break in between them? What should we do? Anyway, I'm open to suggestions. If y'all have them. If you want to see me doing the singles, I can do a cameo as Dobby on one, since we talked about that last week. I'd love to get back into Dobby. It's just a little time consuming for me. But it's a fun cosplay, and I haven't been able to get back into the cosplay since I got the actual outfit, like the actual cosplay outfit. So that'll be fun. You got a peppermint chocolate bundt cake. Get your cake. Get your tea. Get your coffee. Get settled in. Get a comfy blanket. Get your cat. Sit down. That's so aggressive. Sit down. I try not to be aggressive. I'm just insistent. I'll trade you some of these praline pecans. Yeah, I'm thinking I might separate them because then I'll feel less like a schedule. You have your tea and your cat. Awesome. Trying not to remember it. It's such a good... Oh, he's so cute. Look at this cat. Look at this cat. It's the best cat. Anyway. Yeah, sit down. You know what? I will be aggressive. Minorly aggressive. Sit down. We're going to read a book. Is the music okay? Is it too loud? Last check before we go on. Before I destroy you. Okay. Sorry. These last few chapters, you're going to be so mad, you guys. Fine. Stand, Finn. Stand in the corner. All right. Chapter 13. in which the Carnival of Discord opens its gates for the last time and things go terribly wrong. Cabal passed the rest of the day trying to keep his mind off of a variety of things: failure, damnation, Leonie Barrow. First, he worked on his conjuring. The card vanish he'd used to dispose of the extra ticket he'd offered Frank Barrow had been technically correct, but an artistic disaster. It would never do. He sat down with a deck of cards in front of a mirror and started vanishing them methodically and steadily until his pockets and sleeves bulged. Then he shook them out and started again. And again. And again. Then, for variety's sake, he started vanishing and immediately reproducing them. The Queen of Spades flickered in and out of existence in his hand. He watched his hands closely in the reflection. He'd made a point of angling the mirror so that he could see only his hands in it. He had no desire to see his face. When the cards started getting dog-eared and suggestively curved like Tuscan roof tiles, he turned his attention to other objects on his desk. Pens, pencils, and a ruler mysteriously vanished and then made triumphant returns. He'd been pleased with how well he'd managed to make that woman's confession vanish in the police station. Thinking of it, he pulled both it and her contract from his pocket and took a moment to examine them. Nia, she was called. He wasn't sure if he'd ever come across a Nia before. It was a pleasant name, and he let it run with abandon around his mind for a moment. Then he drew the little key from his waistcoat pocket, unlocked the desk drawer, and placed her contract beneath the others in the box. At the top, this left a single blank form. By hook or by crook, it had better be signed before midnight. He put the box away and carefully locked the drawer before returning his attention to the confession. He skimmed it and was quietly impressed at how accurate it was, given her disturbed state of mind at the time. He practiced making it vanish a few more times before tearing it into ribbons and feeding them to the stove in the corner. He leaned back in his chair and drummed his fingers on the desk edge, still a couple of hours before sundown. What to do? Horst had promised to finish his plans for making the carnival more acceptable to the staid people of this town, but when he looked at them, they didn't seem to have been touched. Cabal thought of the talk he'd had with Horst last night and felt unaccountably worried. There had been something important that obviously mattered to Horst, but Johannes had been distracted and missed it. He hoped it wasn't too important. He looked around the office, seeking distraction. His eyes fell upon his large notebook, and he took it up. There was a piece of music that the calliope played, an odd, lurching tune that still sounded faintly familiar. Perhaps if he wrote it out, he might remember where he'd heard it before. Not a man usually given to trivial pursuits, he nevertheless felt no qualms as he took up his ruler and pencil, carefully drew out staves, and started writing in notes. Time passed in quietude, broken only by the frequent crunching of the pencil sharpener. Cabal hated working with blunt instruments. Outside, the riggers followed what there were of Horst's plans in total silence. They didn't even need to breathe, except for effect. The House of Medical Monstrosity had become the home for the genetically challenged, and the tone had changed from be horrified to be educated. The Hall of Pain, tortured down the centuries, had transformed into man's inhumanity, an exhibit of conscience, and monsters into unknown nature, cryptozoological wonders. Cabal himself had started to find his interest piqued by sideshows that he'd spent the last year walking past. Cabal finished writing and looked at his work. It didn't look familiar. Even tilting his head gently from side to side didn't help. Then, acting on a sudden suspicion, he drew some more staves and wrote the music out again, but this time in reverse. It still didn't look familiar, but when he looked at it, it seemed far too cheerful to be a piece he'd naturally associate with this place. He whistled it experimentally. Now he was certain he'd heard it before. Outside, the sun hung just over the horizon. Barrow sat in his garden and watched the day come to a close and wondered idly if he would ever see another. He was going to have to go to the carnival tonight and try to discover what it was that disturbed him so much about it, so wrong and corrupt. He didn't want to. Not at all. Not for a second. He just felt he ought. Furthermore, he felt that he really ought to do something about it. He wished there was somebody he could go to for help. However, he had the oddest feeling that if he suggested to anybody that the Cabal brothers, Johannes in particular, were not just proprietors of a carnival, but were, in actual fact, founts of evil that must be confronted by glowing crusaders for good, such as, for example, himself, and then there was a fair chance he'd be relieved of his braces and laces before being brazenly patronized by a psychiatrist long before the night was out. He thought about what he'd said to Leonie. He was scared for her, more so than ever before in his life. He was scared for himself, too. It's only fear, he thought, and that can't hurt me. Some bugger with a hatchet, now that's worth worrying about. He tried to imagine Cabal bearing down on him with an axe, a knife, a crowbar, and he smiled. The ice-cool Mr. Cabal behaving like a thug. Now that was funny. Then he remembered the dead look in Cabal's eyes when he'd seen Leonie, and suddenly it wasn't funny at all. Across the fields, the sound of the carnival's calliope floated to him, the notes ugly and mocking. Barrow realized that the music had started the instant that the sun had gone down. That didn't surprise him at all. Cabal ignored the calliope and continued to whistle the reversed music. Damnation, what was it? I'm glad you think so, said Horst from behind him. Cabal turned, the whistle dying on his lips. What do you mean? You, whistling Happy Days, are here again? You have a perverse sense of humor. Horst pulled on his coat and top hat. If you'll forgive me, I don't like the atmosphere in here very much. The door opened and shut, and Johannes Cabal was alone once more, in all senses of the word. Cabal looked at the staves with disbelief. He leaned forward over the notebook and rested his fingertips on the first note. Happy days are here again, he sang quietly as his finger tapped from note to note. Yes, Horst was quite right. In abrupt disgust, he tore the pages out and threw them in the wastepaper basket. Very funny. Most amusing. He pulled on his coat and hat and went to find Horst. Somewhere, somebody laughed. Horst was walking in long-legged strides between the stands, stalls, and sideshows, pointedly ignoring the riggers that approached him, asking for clarifications of his half-written plans. Johannes Cabal had no trouble finding him. He just followed the trail of disgruntled men with wilting bits of paper in their hands. He caught up with Horst by the mysteries of Egypt, where Cleopatra had managed to buttonhole him. As Cabal approached, he could hear her haranguing Horst. "What's all this, then, eh?" she squalled, waving a sheet of paper under Horst's nose. "It's your revised script," said Horst with an uncharacteristic irritation. "Learn it. Now." "What's wrong with me old script, eh?" She changed gear, and her voice became mellifluous, sensuous. "I," she breathed the word, "am Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, mistress," this she said with a significant look, "of the Nile. Come with me and discover the pleasures and the terrors of the ancient world." She went from smoky seductress to Billingsgate fishwife in much less than a second. "There! What's wrong with that, eh? I mean, there was dog's bollocks that were, now you've given me this crap." She waved the sheet in his face. "What's all this shite? About dynasties and stuff. People don't want to know about that. They want to hear about shagging and murder and people having their brains fished out their noses and stuff." Horst was never impolite to ladies. Unfortunately for Cleopatra, she wasn't only definitely not a lady, she wasn't even technically human. "Shut up," said Horst in a cold hiss. He sounded a lot like his brother. "Just shut up. Come midnight, you're dust and ashes, just like everybody else in this traveling nightmare, so I really don't care what you think. You learn the script I've given you, and you deliver it properly. If I come around this show later and find you delivering the old one, or deliberately making a bad job of the new one, you're not even going to make it to midnight. Do you understand me?" Cleopatra blinked. All right, she said in a very small voice. Horst, called Cabal as he approached. Horst, what has gotten into you? Cleopatra looked fearfully at the pair of them. You're dismissed, said Cabal, and she ran off into the sideshow like a frightened, coal-smirched bunny. What has gotten into me? Horst looked at the dark sky. When he looked back down, his expression was one of purest animosity. Where do I begin? Cabal's mind worked quickly to isolate an event that might have caused such a rapid deterioration in relations. This is about that woman last night, isn't it? The one with the child? Yes, this is about the woman last night, the one with the child. What did you do to her? What dirty little stunt did you pull? I granted her wish, that's all. And she signed over her soul for it. No, she didn't. She'd signed over her soul so that I'd take the wish away again. She wanted the child dead, Horst. She's no angel. Horst waved his finger in Cabal's face. No, she didn't want her baby dead. For crying out loud, Johannes, she just wanted a little help. Couldn't you see that? Couldn't you see that she just wanted a little help? She needed a babysitter, not a plan for murder. I don't care what she needed, said Cabal, feeling his temper stirring. She was prepared to sign for what she got. That's all that matters. That's all that matters? That is not all that matters. By a very long chalk, she's a person, a human being, a living woman. Not just another name on one of your forms. You've ruined her life, you know that? She knows what's waiting for her now, hanging over her. I didn't hear you make this kind of fuss over any... Pay attention, Johannes. The difference is that she hadn't done anything wrong until you railroaded her into it. You've finally become what you were always meant to be. Cabal's sixth sense belatedly started tingling. He had the faint impression that somebody was making a fool of him. Had been making a fool of him for the last year. Somebody who smelled quite strongly of brimstone. What do you mean? He asked cautiously. You are such a fool, said Horst. That's what this whole exercise has really been about. I thought you'd have worked it out a long, long time ago. Old Hob down below isn't interested in a pile of souls that he would have got anyway. He wanted to push you into taking one, corrupting one. That business with Billy Butler was to make you desperate, make you forget that somewhere inside, Horst's voice cracked slightly, there's a good man. My little brother, Johannes. That's all gone now. You're not trying to beat the devil anymore. You're doing his work for him. You're not my brother anymore. I won't help you anymore. Horst turned and started to walk away. Horst? Cabal's voice was small, disbelieving. Horst braced himself against sentiment, kept walking. Horst, I need you. I can't do this alone. I'm so close. Horst! His brother's stride never faltered. Johannes Cabal's temper was a volatile quantity at the best of times, and he could feel it riding in his gullet now. This time, however, it was different. There was something else there, a blossoming flower of easy violence that flooded up through his chest and found expression on his tongue, a faint taste of aniseed. You will help me, Horst, he said, his voice stronger, or you'll stay the way you are now forever. Horst stopped. He stood still a long moment and then turned. What? He said quietly. Did you just say? You have power over him, thought Cabal, although part of him was wondering if somebody else was doing his thinking for him. He can't talk to you like that. I said you'll do what you're told, or you can stay a parasite for the rest of time. Horst took a moment to consider his words. He walked right up to his brother until they were nose to nose and said, Go Fuck yourself, Johannes. There was a sudden breeze as air rushed into the space that used to be full of Horst. Cabal looked around, blinking. He was quite alone. Who needs him? Said a small voice in his heart. You're the man with the plan. Get to it. One last soul needed. Horst was just holding you back with all his stupid little scruples. Now you don't have to pussyfoot around looking for somebody who wants to give their soul away. Now you can find a likely candidate and take it. Frank Barrow moved with surprising stealth through the shadows behind the sideshows. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he was damn sure that it wasn't in plain sight. He turned up at the turnstiles, handed over the complimentary ticket, noticed that almost everybody else in the queue had one too, and had then entered the carnival ground with the sullen expression of somebody who expected to be entertained. He'd stood by a ginnel formed between the parapsychological perplex experience, the ghost train, and the sociopathic mind, a chamber of horrors stuffed to the rafters with waxworks of infamous murderers. Several of the waxworks, studied closely, could be seen to breathe, blink, and appear rather nervous. This was because they were the real things. A strawberry-picking expedition for the serial killer wing of Ladestone Prison had proved a sad disappointment for the progressive governor. The carnival just happened to be nearby at the time, and in return for a place to hide, the escaped convicts had naturally been required to fill in a few forms. Fair's fair, after all. Cabal had somehow neglected to mention that their bolt hole was going to vanish within the year. Ah, well. And made a great show of winding his watch. The instant he wasn't observed, he'd faded into the background. Now he shook the rust off of his old shadowing skills and saw what he might see. He'd stumbled upon the Cabal brothers having some sort of argument, but hadn't been able to get close enough to find out what it had been about. An odd thing, though. There had been a point when he'd been sure that Horst was about to punch Johannes. Barrow had blinked, and Johannes had suddenly been alone. He wasn't quite sure where Horst had got to, and judging by the way he'd been casting about, neither had Johannes. Then Johannes Cabal had paused, and a very unpleasant smile had crept across his face, like a melanoma in a time-lapse. It was another odd thing in and of itself, because Cabal had looked very different for some reason, almost like a different person. Then, full of a sense of purpose that Barrow found alarming in its suddenness, Cabal had strode off into the carnival's main thoroughfare. Now Barrow was moving quietly, unseen, but what he was seeing was worrying. He'd spent a lot of time in his life in places of hard manual work and was used to their rhythms and nuances. Here, there were none. He'd asked at the pub in town what were the riggers like. The landlord had shrugged. He had no clue. None had been in. Barrow thought this was downright perverse. Unless the Cabals had manned their carnival with Quakers, Muslims, and assorted other teetotalers, there was no obvious explanation. Unless, bizarre as it sounded, they simply didn't drink. Following a hunch, he'd been to the grocer's and asked a few questions there, too. Yes, the carnival had bought supplies, but nowhere near as much as might be expected for such a large operation. They're on starvation rations, the grocer had said miserably. They hardly bought enough food to feed 20. Looking at a couple of the strapping men standing by the big wheel, he found the idea of anybody here starving very difficult to believe. He watched them as they smiled and waved at a crowd of teenagers going by. Then another curious thing happened. The instant the crowd passed out of sight, the two riggers froze solid. Barrow thought they'd seen something and shielded his eyes against the fierce, clear light of the stringed bulbs, but there was nothing to see. And after a moment, he realized that was what they were looking at. There was nothing there. And nobody to pretend for. Nobody to go through the act of being real people for. Barrow could have waited for somebody else to come by to test his hypothesis. He could have even walked around and by them to see them go through their paces on his behalf. He could have, But he didn't. And he didn't because he'd willingly gargle with toilet cleaner. And his extensive experience out of harm's way was a marvelous and worthwhile place to be. And he wanted to maintain his tenancy there for as long as humanly possible. Dancing up and down in front of a couple of enormous things with arms and legs that did a reasonable impersonation of people might be construed as provocative. Softly, softly, catchy monkey had been the unofficial motto of the police when he'd carried a warrant card, and when the monkey looked like it would have had little difficulty tearing your head off and spitting down your neck, it was particularly good advice. Instead, he vanished, back into the shadows to find more data. He couldn't hypothesize without data. When Frank Barrow built a case, it stayed airtight at 200 atmospheres. Hello, can I help you? Well, hello, Miss Queen. Come here. You want to read a story? Come on. Come on, baby. Yeah, hi. Hi. What, you just barged your way in here? Terribly sorry. The Queen has graced us with her presence. Hi, Pawn. Yeah, Pawn, please don't knock over that ring light. No! Oh my god. Pawn's gonna knock over the ring light. Hey! Look, you want to come up to the... that's the wire for the mic. No, don't do that. This is why I shut the door. Low-key. She just barged her way in here. Hi. Yes, come up here. Come up. You can come up here. There's a wire, yes, but it's attached. You can come up here if you want. Quit looking at my lap like you don't... Here you go. Queen Pond has arrived. She just barged her way in here. I don't know what's going on. You okay? You okay? You can lay on the couch. I'm gonna read to the internet. I'm gonna read to the internet. Okay, this is Pond. She's your new president. She's adorable. She normally doesn't like to sit still and likes to knock everything over. So, I shut the door, but she just barged her way in here in the middle of the chapter. And just lay there like you own the place. Yeah, you do. You pay rent. Yep, you own this house. You own this lap. Good. She's just gonna, yeah, President Pond now presiding. She's just gonna chill here and I guess purr in my lap the entire time. I'm gonna finish reading this if you don't mind. If you don't mind? You don't mind, right? She sits in my lap when I read all the time anyway, so if you end up sideways, we'll know why. Yeah, you'll, trust me, you'll know. Everyone will know. Good Pond. Yeah, I'm gonna finish the chapter that you interrupted. You can stay here though. So calm, so nice, so sweet. Yes. God, where did I leave off? Oh, okay, found it. Okay, I'm gonna continue where I left off now. There was none of the behind-the-scenes stuff that one might expect. He discovered as he peered through tent flaps and listened at ajar doors, everything was as dead as dust when the townsfolk weren't there. Nobody spoke, nobody moved, although he was sure he'd heard a mass gasp of exhaled breath when a party had left the Hall of Murderers in the sociopathic mind. Dead as dust. Cold as clay. The cogs of the idea that had started forming earlier were beginning to mesh. He didn't like the look of the machine they were forming at all. It seemed too fantastic. Like a heart pacemaker made from balsa wood and chewing gum. He must have it wrong. He just couldn't quite see how, though. After all, if it's got 4 legs, yaps, and wants to be best pals with your shin, then it's likely to be a dog. Barrow felt he had enough circumstantial evidence that if he threw a rubber bone, this particular idea would bring it back for him, plus a large puddle of drool. Barrow had a bad feeling that he knew exactly what was going on. "I know you," said a voice quietly behind him. Barrow whirled to find Horst standing there. "You're Frank Barrow." Horst raised his hands in supplication. "Really, I mean you no harm." Barrow belatedly realized that he had settled into a boxer's stance. He grunted with embarrassment and straightened up. Horst looked at him coolly. I'd got the impression from somewhere that you were Penlow's mayor or some such. Do your duties include skulking around visiting carnivals? How long have you been watching me? Said Barrow with some bluster thrown in for effect. He needed time to get over his surprise. Me? Oh, I get around. I'm here. There. Horst seemed to turn into a long smudge on Barrow's retinas, and then he was standing 20 feet away. Everywhere, he said, appearing abruptly not 2 paces away. Barrow gawped. He'd seen some neat tricks before, but this aced them all. How'd you do that? He managed to ask. Horst shrugged dismissively as if it were on par with ear-waggling. Practice, natural talent, supernatural powers, who knows, who cares? I don't, and you shouldn't. You should be answering my question. I wasn't doing anything wrong. What business is it of yours? You might not have been doing anything wrong, but you may have been considering it. Certain authorities hold that the thought is morally equivalent to the expression. That seems like an auto-flagellomaniac's charter to me. Are you a moral man, Mr. Barrow? Eh? Barrow had been considering escape routes and had just realized what a pointless endeavor it was when up against a man who could break the sound barrier in carpet slippers. I used to be a police officer. Horst raised his eyebrows to demonstrate polite interest. Really? Well, that's nice, of course, but as I was saying, are you a moral man? Barrow let that pass without challenge. Yes, I think I am. Are you, Mr. Cabal? Mr. Cabal is my brother. Call me Horst. And yes, I am. He said the words again, as if realizing the truth in them for the first time. I am a moral man. There are certain things that have to be done, no matter how difficult they are. Forget about blood and water. I have to forget about blood and you. He looked into Barrow's eyes, and Barrow suddenly found he couldn't move, could barely even breathe. Why do you come here when you're so afraid? Barrow would like to have said something doty, but his muscles didn't seem to be returning calls today. Horst continued speaking. Don't give me that saloon bar talk about not having a nerve in your body. I can smell fear, and you're upwind of me. What brings you here when you're so afraid? Your morals? Horst softened his glance, and Barrow could talk again. Yes, I suppose so. Now he was here, it sounded foolish. Foolish, but no less true for all that. I've come to stop you. Horst showed astonishment, going so far as to tap his chest. Stop. Me? In that case, I'm afraid you've had a wasted trip. I've already slowed to a dead halt. A very dead halt. You wouldn't believe the half of it. Neil Winshaw, does that name mean anything to you? Said Barrow sharply. No. Should it? She claimed that this carnival was instrumental in the apparent death of her child. The woman in the penny arcade, said Horst almost to himself. That's right. She made a remarkable confession. Horst didn't seem surprised. Barrow, who had never willingly leapt to a conclusion in his life, carefully put up a stepladder beside one and ascended cautiously. You mean her story's true? I don't know. I haven't heard it, but whatever it is, yes, it's true. Despite Barrow's hunch, it was still a shock to discover that Neil Winshaw's extraordinary story was true, even in part, and with that discovery, the idea that had been gently assembling itself for the last day finally came together, lit its lights, and puffed into action. Oh my God, Johannes Cabal is a necromancer, said Barrow slowly, horror-struck. It explained so much, but taking it in was still so difficult. Yes, there was magic in the world, but it was so rare in these modern days. He'd only had to deal with it on a handful of occasions, and even then it had been of the minor hedge witch sort. Necromancers were at the extreme edge of the world's magic. They were very, very rare, and every time one was detected by justice, state or rough, they became that much rarer. Horst was moderately impressed. Not bad. You must have been a good policeman. Any other conclusions, Hercule? I checked the file on Rufus Maleficaris. Oh, now that's not fair. If people are going to check the facts every time I open my mouth, where does that leave most of my conversation? He was dangerous, all right, but not a necromancer, which isn't to say he hadn't tried. Your brother did kill him, though. Quite the local hero in Merslaw. I sent a telegram to the chief inspector there. There were some other incidents that occurred about the same time. They've talked themselves into believing that some of Maleficaris' mob was still on the loose and causing mischief. Funny thing was that they never found a single one of the lunatics after Maleficaris caught 3 bullets. Why do you suppose that was? Well, obviously, they came to work for this carnival. Obviously. Your brother's already told me as much perfectly candidly. It's only obvious to you because you've been sheltering them. Me? Horst laughed. What makes you think I have any say in anything that matters around here? I didn't shelter them. They just turned up, holding Johannes' coattails like a lot of moonstruck sheep. If moonstruck sheep could hold coattails, which seems unlikely now that I stop to consider it. Barrow wasn't in the mood for analyzing shaky similes. Why? What does your brother hope to achieve? What is all this in aid of? Now that I can't possibly tell you. After all, blood's thicker than water. I can never deliberately dish up my little brother. Little brother? But he looks older than you. You know, I was just considering that very thing the other day. I suppose he must have overtaken me in the aging stakes at some point. Barrow's idea machine was whizzing its cogs gamely by now, and every little datum was crunched up, associated like with like, and quickly delivered as gorgeous little conclusions and engaging presentation cases. This latest piece of information was duly processed and popped up moments later, labeled, Horst Cabal has probably been dead at some point. You're dead, said Barrow, hoping he was reading Horst's character properly. Undead, technically. Not Johannes' doing, I hasten to add, not directly, at any rate. He had promised to find some way of bringing me back to the land of the living. Not that I'm not in the land of the living now, you understand. I'm speaking figuratively. Now, I'm not so sure. I need a little time to think. I don't understand you. Neither do I, I'm afraid. That's why I need to think. It all comes to some sort of conclusion tonight, one way or the other. And Johannes, I don't know what to make of him anymore. I want you to bear one thing in mind. Horst stepped closer and said conspiratorially, He's a desperate man. More so than you might think. A great deal more than I'd have thought. Why don't you stop him? I'm his brother. I can't. I simply can't. I've done all I can, and it's come to nothing. You, though, perhaps you can do something before it's too late. Before it's too late, he said again, as if it were already so. I've got to go. Good luck, Mr. Barrow. Wait, just a second. Barrow didn't want Horst pulling his vanishing act just yet. There's still something I don't understand. What is your brother doing here? Why is he here? I suggest that you ask Miss Winshaw. She's not saying anything. Does she need to? Barrow thought back to what he knew about her case. The facts were impenetrable enough. Perhaps he was looking too hard. When she'd been brought in as a murderer, she'd seemed appalled at what she'd done. Her main thought had been horror at the act itself. She'd confessed immediately and comprehensively, obviously seeking some sort of absolution by throwing her own life away. She'd seemed very relieved when she'd put her name on the confession. Then Johannes Cabal came a-calling. In rapid succession, her baby had turned out to be nowhere near as dead as 2 experienced doctors had believed. Her confession had miraculously disappeared, and she'd started denying everything. Anything else? Why, yes, of course. Her entire attitude had changed. She'd become positively doom-haunted. The only thing that she'd shown any animation about at all was the child's recovery. Not because it meant that there was no longer any charge against her, but for the pure fact that her baby lived. For herself, her horizons seemed to have drawn so close she could touch them. What had blighted her expectations? What could Cabal have said? What could a necromancer have said? What did they deal in? Life and death. Souls, said Barrow finally. Give the man a coconut, said Horst. He paused and looked around. Start being very careful. Now, he said urgently, and blurred into the night. Barrow didn't have very long to wonder after Horst's mercurial departure. Mr. Barrow, what are you doing here? He turned at the sound of Johannes Cabal's voice. I was just having a stroll around, Mr. Cabal, taking in the sights. Cabal smiled very slightly and gestured at their surroundings. There are no sights here, Mr. Barrow. You're missing all the fun of the fair. He looked around the clearing. Where's your daughter, Mr. Barrow? The delightful Leonie? Barrow didn't like the way he said it at all. She's at home. She sends her regrets, but is unable to attend. Unable to attend. You make it sound very formal, Mr. Barrow, but of course you used to be a police officer. Retired. Yes, retired. Some people have a lot of trouble giving up their old jobs, I believe. Keep finding themselves slipping back into old work habits. Take, for example, he looked around as if he might find an example floating in mid-air, and instead he found it directly in front of him. You. Do you ever find yourself looking for crime where there is none? Find it difficult to meet people without assuming they have some sort of dreadful conspiracy up their sleeve? Find yourself sneaking around places like a thief in the night? No, replied Barrow honestly. Not these days. The two men stood, perhaps half a dozen yards apart in the shadows of the sideshows, half a dozen yards of grass between them. To Barrow, it seemed like the gulf between galaxies. To Barrow, it didn't seem nearly far enough. There was something unaccountably different between the man who stood before him now and the man he'd spoken to that morning. That Cabal had seemed flawed and human. This one, however, was behaving like a stage villain. His arch manner and verbal fencing were beginning to irritate Barrow. He had to be careful. It was far too easy to give away too much. Why didn't he just set up a magic lantern display for Cabal entitled Everything I Know About You while he was about it? Unless it's for a worthy cause. How mysterious. And here I was, sure that we'd come to some sort of understanding, and here we are with you sneaking around away from the thoroughfare without another soul to be seen. Poor pickings for you, then, said Barrow, and cursed the words as soon as they were out of his lips. If he was expecting a witty riposte from Cabal, he was mistaken. Cabal simply ran at him. Halfway across the distance, Barrow heard a noise he hadn't heard since he'd been on the beat in the thieves' kitchens of the city, the distinctive click of a switchblade, and knew that Cabal intended to kill him, there and then. As Cabal reached him, his arm extended like a lance, tipped with 3 inches of scalpel-sharp steel. Barrow allowed himself to start falling sideways. He grabbed Cabal's knife hand and forced him to keep running straight over Barrow's shins. Cabal turned a full cartwheel in midair before landing on the tips of his toes and sprawling face down on the turf. Barrow wasn't too concerned about Cabal's martial artistry on this showing, but he could and would surely call on his small army of thugs. Discretion seemed appropriate, and he ran for the bright lights. Perhaps, if he could find an off-duty policeman, he might stand a chance. Almost a minute passed. Johannes Cabal rolled onto his back and slowly drew the knife from his clothes. He'd been very, very lucky. The blade had scraped obtusely across his side, the waistcoat and shirt having tangled and deflected it. He threw the bloodied knife on the grass in disgust, his gloves quickly joining it. He probed at the wound with his fingertips and winced. Very lucky. He staunched the cut with his handkerchief and applied pressure while he tried to reorder his thoughts. He looked at the blood on his free hand. What had come over him? Violence was loathsome, but occasionally necessary. He had no problems with that. But this? He'd been standing there, talking like an idiot. Barrow had rather unwisely given away too much. How had he learned the truth of the carnival? No matter, there were more important things to attend to, and the next thing he knew, he'd had his knife in his hand and was bearing down on Barrow like a member of one of those childish street gangs he'd heard tell of. It was so unlike him. Of course, Barrow would have to go, but it could have been done with a little more forethought. Now he was off and running and spreading fear and apprehension. And it was almost as if Cabal was working against himself. "Oh," he said sharply. "I see." A few minutes later, Cabal appeared at the popcorn stand and helped himself to the salt tub with bloodied fingers. Outstanding orders for cartons promptly all changed from salted to sweet. "I abjure thee," he snapped furiously and threw the salt over his left shoulder. The fascinated onlookers could have sworn they heard a yelp from thin air. Cabal straightened up slightly as if a weight had been lifted from him. The pervasive taste of aniseed left his palate. "Right. Where's Bones?" he demanded of the popcorn lady before winding his way through the crowd. Down in hell, Slabbath watched with polite interest as Mimble Scummyskirts, an imp of notorious and incandescent fury, washed her smarting eyes with warm saline. "That is sterile, isn't it?" "How the funk should I know, eh?" replied Mimble with the easy lack of delicacy that would result in rapid promotion up the non-commissioned ranks. "What a sod! Just do me piskin' job, and boff, I gets a face full of kelchin salt. Exercise, sweet as kiss me skank, that pawbo." The worrying thing was that every one of Mimble's oaths and curses actually meant something, and every one was far, far worse than anything cleared for release into the world of men. "There are limits, you know," Satan had said. "Don't give yourself airs," said Slabbath. "You're not actually capable of possession, so it wasn't really an exorcism. You could only color his actions, not control them. And a fine mess you made of that," he thought. "It was more of an eviction." Mimble left General Slabbath in no doubt that the difference between eviction and exorcism was a petty one, of concern only to armchair generals who never got off their big, fat... At which point, Slabbath was nowhere near as refined as he pretended, squashed Mimble Scummyskirts into an aniseed-flavored smear with his thumb, and went to report to Satan, leaving the smear to think really bad thoughts for the 666 years it would take to reform. Ooh, yep, hi. That is the end of the chapter. And Pawn sat here through the entire chapter. I am pleasantly surprised. Just chilled here. Didn't knock over anything. Didn't make a mess. Good Pond. There's so many wires she could be chewing right now. You know? Hello, you're back. Glad to see you. So, how did we all like the chapter? Are we pumped? There's, oof, the next one is gonna be, you're gonna be mad by the end. Because it's gonna be a cliffhanger. I'm just gonna go ahead and warn you. I hear Lucy all the time. You almost fell asleep? Good, that's what this is designed for. You should be falling asleep. You can always catch up later on the YouTube. The chapter was so good. I know, I like that one a lot. And it only gets worse. The last chapter is, or the last chapter that we're going to read today, not like the last chapter, features heavily, like a character that is mentioned in passing, but doesn't get a whole lot of time. But that I really like. because it's like a representation of every serial killer that was like thrown like under, that was just under the radar, like as a regular looking white dude, you know? Like they were like, oh, you have a crowbar and a bloody knife in your trunk? That's not suspicious at all. You can move on. Like every white man they just let roll on by because he was an average white man is the representation of this character, and it's just, it's fun. Ooh, that chapter. Yeah. Yeah, good pond. Just chilling here. Just being a good cat. Yay. Someone said something earlier and I was like, I gotta go back and read this. And I just remembered to do that. Oh, okay, y'all were, this is less traumatizing than some Disney movies. Yeah, see, like, I thought about, like, putting it, but I was like, it's not really that bad. I watched worse on Cops when I was a kid. And I watched Cops a lot. I watched a lot of true crime growing up. I still watch a lot of true crime. Yeah. Your audience loves you, Pond. She's a big purr. She gets comfy, she'll purr for really loudly for an inordinate amount of time. Yeah, good girl. See, because the more we get, no, that's on my list. I love unsolved mysteries. I saw that they had new unsolved mysteries where they like revisit the old ones. I think someone was telling me on Hulu, and that's also on my list. I'm excited. I just watched the John Wayne Gacy documentary that came out. And then I was gonna, oh man, something was on my list the other day that I saw, and I was like, ooh, they did a documentary on, you know what I really want? You know what I really want? Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I really, really want. And, oh man, don't read too into that. No, hello. What I really, really want. I want a horror movie based, no, not Spice Girls. I'm sorry, I didn't actually mean for that to sound that way. And that wasn't a reference. That was me being legit with you. No, what I really want is a horror movie based on the concept of Linda Hazard's Starvation Heights. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? I fell asleep in your live last time? That's good. You're supposed to fall asleep. That's actually a good thing. Trust me. You can always catch up on the YouTube. I want someone, because they take the basis for like actual serial killers and make them into movies and shit all the time, right? But it's always some lame it's not lame, it's just the same story. They've done Ted Bundy like 6 times. Shut up about Ted Bundy. We all know about Ted Bundy, okay? I don't need Ted Bundy again. I want something fresh, something new. Give me something new. And I want Starvation Heights. I just love that story. Because can you imagine just being like less than 10 feet away from your sister in the next room you can't talk to, and you legitimately just do not even have the strength to get up and go to the next room and be like, hey, we should leave, right? We should leave. You're literally trapped in your room. But there are no locks. There's no one threatening you. Just this lady that's promising to make you healthy because you have a tilted uterus and is like, don't worry, I'm going to make you well. And then you slowly start to realize, and you're laying in your bed with your sister less than 20 feet away, and you have no means of escape because you cannot physically lift yourself up out of bed. And then later having your sister die, and you're just sitting in a chair next to a cliff, next to the woman that you're for sure has done it. And she's like, you know, some people just jump off. Just a thought. Yes, it is. Yeah, no, look up, it's a real story. It's a real story. There was a woman who loosely proclaimed that she was a doctor. That made it seem like she had a medical degree, but she really didn't. Because you could do that back then. Restrictions on healthcare were like not super great, and opened a wellness center that was in the middle of fucking nowhere, and promised to, legitimately was just like, I can cure any kind of ailment, any kind of disease, anything that exists, I can cure it with my thing. And basically was like, it's the modern day juice cleanse. She was just like, just drink tomato juice. It clears all the toxins out of your body is what it does. Also, if you want to speed up the process, I can give you about 100 enemas. And would do that. And then would be like, and also you get a full massage every day, but the massage was like abuse. And she did it to loads of people. The richer you were, the worse off you were.
This open or closed? The cat keeps pushing it open.
She keeps opening the door.
Okay.
She was leaving, I guess, and then just decided.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I closed this door like 3 fucking times. And
I'm so sorry. It's the cat. She just goes where she wants. Sorry. Anyway, Starvation Heights is what the nickname they gave to her facility after she eventually, like, and the thing is that she kind of didn't even really get prosecuted that hard because they were like, because they couldn't prove that she intended to do it. They could only prove that she was incompetent. And you know what? There's no calling to say that she didn't eventually end up believing her own bullshit, because she ended up doing it to herself. That's how she died. She was her own last victim. Oh, wait, Ask a Mortician has a documentary on it? I did not know that. I love Ask a Mortician, and I also love Starvation Heights. I've known about Starvation Heights for a long time, though. But I have always said, I consistently, when Don't Starve came out, I was like, is that a game based on Starvation Heights? And people were like, what are you talking about? I'm corrupted. Yeah, she got almost off, like, completely scot-free. But it's clear that she kind of intended to do it, but they couldn't catch her at it, because she definitely did have people unknowingly sign over all their assets. And then shortly after that, they would die, right? But there's no, like, proof that she meant to do it. But it was real shady. It was real shady, but they couldn't fully prosecute her. But you know. We know. She meant to do it. And what I think is that she eventually started to believe her own bullshit. But legitimately, I feel like Don't Starve should have been Starvation Heights. Maybe that's dumb. It would be a great horror game. Tell me that doesn't sound like a great indie horror game. Also, make a great movie. Are you telling me that would make a great movie? Oh, I would love that. Netflix. Somebody get Netflix on the phone. They need to do this. They keep doing Ted Bundy. How many times are you going to do Ted Bundy? Give us Linda Hazard. I would love that. Anyway, that's my hot take for the day. Is Starvation Heights as a horror movie / video game. Or just as a docu-series. There's so much information on that now, like about like the not just the sisters, but like a bunch of people that the dudes that she was with. Anyway, it was weird. It was weird. There's a whole thing. There's a lot of information on it. Her name should have been a warning. Yeah, and Hazard, last name Hazard. That's like meeting some dude that's last name is like Slaughter, and you're like, this is gonna go well. No, I'm joking. Don't judge anybody based on their name. That's rude. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, now if you picked the name, if you changed your name to that yourself, I feel like that's problematic. But if you just got named that, you know, major sketch. But come on. We can always judge Neiman. And granted, I'm judging Neiman's parents. Who did this? Who was the culprit here? I need to know who's responsible. Because I'm judging whoever's responsible. Anyway. That is my hot take for the day. I'm glad you all enjoyed that. Why? I just spent a whole lot of time just ranting about my favorite true crime story. Or one of my favorite true crime stories. I also like cults. I'm really into groupthink and brainwashing and like anything that has like actual research done on that, like the psychological aspect of cults. Love that. You like the rants. Should have made a rant about that. I didn't do that. I haven't done one of those in a while. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the roses. My eyeball's twitching. Why? It's because I didn't drink enough coffee today. That's pretty much probably what it is. Rant with Toshi. Just, oh man, one day we're just gonna have a big cult discussion because there's so much I could go on about. I can't even get into it because I know if we get into it, we're never gonna reach chapter 40. God, don't tell me you don't know anything about it because then I will want to educate you. It's the one thing that I start ranting about, like hardcore, and people just don't respond, and then later I realize that I was info dumping on them the entire time and they said nothing, and then I'm like, I can't ever talk again. Why did I do that? Like, I'm glad that you all like the rants, but most of the time in real life I'm quiet until something like this comes up, and then I'm like, did you say lobotomy? And then I'm off. And then that's why people think I'm a murderer, probably. Because I just really like weird turn-of-the-century medical equipment. I want to be a mortician, but people don't know that. So then it just looks like I know an inordinate amount of stuff about dead bodies. And I'm like, no, it's because I'm sorry. I've done this. And I make everyone uncomfortable. Oh my god, I was talking to Nodi the other day and was just straight up was like, well, I mean, you know what happens when you inject bleach into a dialysis patient? Because I was talking about a true crime story. And they were like, no, what? Tell me. And that's the one thing I can count on any Denki Kinney for is just exuberant enthusiasm. Just immediately. They don't care how disturbing it is. No Denki does. And that's why I really love Denkis, because it doesn't matter the topic. They're going to be with you on it. And I love that about them. But they were like, no, tell me about it. And I was off, you know. And then another person came up that we both know and was like, what is happening over here? And I was like, I don't have a good explanation for this. I just backed myself into a corner. So it was like, you know what happens when you inject bleach into a dialysis patient? And they were like, no. And I was like, Good. Just Google that. And then I left because I didn't want to talk to a random person about it. I wanted to talk to people that I know about it. See, that's why y'all are great. That's why I talk to you guys. I don't talk to a whole lot of people. William Afton is in the chat. Okay, I gotta tell you, I had a really vivid dream last night that I was William Afton from FNAF, and I think it's all the FNAF content that I'm seeing on my timeline right now. Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry. Dinky kitties are the best. And that's the thing, is I wasn't counting on another person walking up, and then immediately they walked up, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know you. You're gonna have to leave. And then me and Dinky last night got into like an hour conversation about how they would be a really great charismatic cult leader if they had less ADHD and more drive to do it. Because they would. Because they're charismatic. I'm not. I'd be good at making people think certain things, but I wouldn't be as charismatic about it. I couldn't be the leader. You're gonna have to leave Toshi 29. I had a dream where I was William Afton. Like, just, I was William Afton. I was walking around putting kids in animatronics, and I was like, I have to leave this dream. Like, I can't be here. I did. And I had a really weird dream because I was getting into a lot of weird content. Yeah, I did actually. I crashed earlier today. Like, I stayed up way too late because I couldn't sleep. And then when it finally hit, I crashed. I just crashed. It was so great though. It was really great sleep. And I probably won't sleep again like that for a while. So, I did. I went to bed and everything. It was so comfortable. I don't run on Monsters. I normally run on coffee, so, and I don't sleep very well most of the time, so, but I'll get really exhausted and then I'll just tank. Like, I'll just crash. I have no control over it. And then I'll sleep for a real long time, and I'll have like a dream like a normal person, and I'll sleep like almost a full night's sleep on my own. Like, I mean, like, I'll sleep like a really long time, like 6 hours, and then I'm like, oh my god. But I'll wake up and feel like it's my back. My back feels like I got hit by a truck. You know what I mean? And I know what that feels like because I have been hit by a truck. And man, it's not great. And I'm like, why do every time I fall asleep, it just feels like someone did terrible back surgery. Someone went in the back, severed one of my spinal root stems, and yeah, I guess, I don't know, it feels terrible. But I'll tell you what it was I got a migraine yesterday, and I actually took pills for it because I'm not a big pill taker either. But when I get like really bad, I'll take pills. So then I took pills. And then after it resolved itself and the headache and, went away, I tanked. And it was nice. I'm not gonna lie. It is a long time. Is it not? It's long for me. It's like 4 hours normally is my normal amount. 3 to 4 hours. 6 hours is a long time to sleep. See, Insomniac knows. Insomniac's gonna got my back on this. 6 hours is a long time. For me. When I tank, I'll tank. Like, I'll go to bed for 6 hours. Like a normal amount of sleep, I guess, for a regular person. What do you consider a normal amount of sleep? That's less than that. Oh, God. Wait, how much are we supposed to get? 3 or 13. There's no in between. Either a light nap or I'm gone for a whole day. Probably 8. 8. Oh God. Yeah, no. I don't know about 8. Five is normal. Yeah, that's a good healthy number for me. Like on an average night, I'd be thrilled if I got 5. I normally average about 4. Has been my average, which has been good. I drink tea before I go to sleep. I get myself all nice and relaxed, which is good because when I have bad nights and I don't do that, or like, it helps when I drink too. I try not to rely on that, but I'll have like a Jack and Coke before I go to bed and I'll stay asleep for like 4 hours, which is a good healthy amount. So it's either a drink or tea. Oh. Me and Insomniac have almost the same level of sleep. You force yourself to sleep and it actually works. How do you force yourself to sleep? How are y'all doing this? Are you injecting yourself? What are you doing? Do you give yourself a mild sedative? What's happening? I wish I could get more than 1 hour of sleep. God, you know what? Yeah, I feel for you. Sleep is fantastic. I wish I could do it more. Yeah, force yourself. How? How are you doing it? How? I need to know how you're doing it. Give us the info. How are you doing it? He's got a Xanax prescription. No, I'm joking. No. I only said he because his name is William Afton. They. How? We need sleep. We've started a chant. What? Okay, good. I wanted to make sure. I am mad at you, sir. How dare you? How dare you come in here with I find a comfortable spot and go to sleep. You don't think we're doing that? What do you think we're doing? What do you mean? I get as comfortable as possible. I can't. And then lay there. I can't believe you've done this. Okay, 1, if I'm counting, I will finish the count before I go to sleep. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. Because I've tried counting, okay? I've tried the breathing, I've tried the not moving, I've tried the meditation where you systematically shut down all your body parts and don't move anymore. My armpit always itches by the end of that, by the way. It doesn't work. You itch, and then you're like, I gotta scratch it. And then you move, and then the meditation's broken. You can't do that. Look, okay, the thing is, I've tried that running a little movie in my head while I'm sleeping to relax me. I've tried the breathing. I've tried the closing my eyes and counting. I've tried it. The only thing is melatonin does work, but it only works until you get used to the amount that you're taking. That is my problem, is I have to increase the amount. And then I'm taking so much melatonin, I can't. And then I'm addicted to melatonin, which I don't want to be. I don't want to be dependent on any substance. Like anything that I'm doing, I would like to be able to stop it at any point. We got off the rails. I meant to start chapter 14, but now I'm just so upset. No, I'm joking. I'll still read chapter 14. I'm just like, how? Like, how? Like, how and like what? Did Afton leave? Did we run chapter 14? I'm just like, how? Like, how? Like, how and like what? Did Afton leave? Did we run Afton out of town? Tell me he's still here. Everybody lay off William Afton. Wait. Never thought that sentence would leave my mouth before. That's a whole child murderer. What did I do? Nobody take that out of context. No, chapter 14. We didn't read the second one. We still have another one to go. We read the first one, and then we took a pause and we got talking about Starvation Heights and then eventually Sleep, and now we just get on you can let it pass by. Oh God, that's hilarious. William Afton is still here. Oh my God. Are you calling people in here? What are you doing? You getting an army? What are we doing? Yeah, he's in here sharing the live like a bunch of times. I don't know if he's calling an army in here or what is happening, but I'm not sure what's going on. Hello, he's getting reinforcements for his sleep idea. Just lay down, it'll be fine. Let me have... He's getting an army of people who sleep. How you doing? Hey, how's your sleep schedule? That's what we were just talking about. Any newcomers, you have to post how many hours of sleep you get on average. New rule. No, I'm joking. We're not starting a war here, guys. Look, just get some chloroform. Okay, one, it's harder to knock someone out with chloroform than you think. It doesn't just like immediately work. You have to hold that crap on there for several minutes. And if you accidentally fall asleep with it, you'd have to get someone else to chloroform you first. And the thing is that with chloroform, you actually have to keep doing it because you will wake back up. And not in a long amount of time. It's not going to knock you out for an entire night. It's not even going to knock you out for multiple hours. Some people only get knocked out for like maybe a half hour to 45 minutes. And even then you have to keep reapplying it. And it's also toxic. So keep in mind that even though it does knock you out, it is still toxic and has the ability to cause permanent damage. But I went on a thing again. Don't ask why I know so much about how to chloroform people. I haven't chloroformed anyone. And I am terribly sorry. You know what? We're going to read chapter 14 now. You all ready for chapter 14? Don't... It's not the advice you gave earlier. So sorry. Yeah, we're gonna read chapter 14. You guys good? Are we ready for chapter 14? We're ready, right? Oh my God. No, we're conversing. No. Guys. Look. I'm not gonna... No. No, we don't. I don't know any of the Shinzo Kennies low-key, so I can't actually make a statement on that. We don't talk to each other, and I think that's the hallmark of being a Shinzo Kenny, is no one's gonna talk to each other. I was talking to Denki, and they were like, yeah, we have a group chat with all the Denkies. I was like, what? I don't even think I've talked to another Shinzo Kenny. Okay, me and Insomniac talk, but we don't have no group chat. And we're probably never going to get one. I'm glad you could join us, Afton. Bro, the Discord is just gone now. What? Is it? Insomniac joined the Discord. Why is the Discord gone? Where's the Discord gone? Oh, I put it in a link tree. That might be why you're thinking it's gone. I put it in a link tree. Because it was having trouble sticking in the bio, and the link wouldn't work when you clicked on it entirely, because it stopped working after a few hours. Like, it wouldn't transfer anymore. You had to copy it. So I put it in a link tree, and it's... Why is it gone? I'm going to have to check that out after this live is over, because I can't check it now. Look, okay, you can be offended, but keep in mind, I didn't do this. I don't know what's going on, but it's there. Okay, I was like, it's in the link tree. You hit the link tree in my bio, and the Discord link should be at the bottom. No, it's still there? Okay, yeah. I just changed the locations. Finn, I just changed the location. Join us, sounds sus. This is turning into a cult, you guys. Don't you want to be a cult leader? No, we're not going to be in a cult. Linktree, if you go to my profile, it will have like a link on there that you can click underneath the bio, and when you click it, it takes you to a bunch of different links that are on a page to my YouTube, my Instagram, my other socials, and there's a Discord link on there with a group of us in it for the book club. And it is... Yeah. It literally is just a website that lets you post multiple links in a row. So it has all my other socials on there. And you can go there and find it. Or you should be able to go there and find it. People were saying they couldn't find the Discord. But it could be because my Discord used to be in the bio. And instead I took it out and just made a link tree and then put the Discord in the link tree. Yeah, it is really convenient. And that's why I broke down and got one, because I was like, TikTok's being real weird about links, and it's not linking completely to the YouTube. People were saying they were having trouble with the YouTube, and then it would only link my YouTube or my Instagram. It wouldn't link both, so I was getting frustrated with that. And then I tried to add the Discord, and then it posted, but then it just you would have to copy the link and put it in your browser, which was stupid. So I just made a link tree and put the Discord in the link tree, and that seemed to work better. It worked when I tested it. I have a sock account. I got on my sock account, went on my main, and then clicked it, and it worked. So hypothetically, yeah, but also in practice, I tried it. Granted, it was a week ago, and it worked. So I guess I'll get off here and test it and make sure. But you'll click on everything, make sure it works after the live. Appreciate that, Insomniac. Yeah. Whoop. Sorry. Whoop. It worked today. Okay. I trust... Don't leave me. I'll do it. Yeah, sweet. Loads of people joined the Discord today. I've seen a couple people say that they were joining it. We just talk shit, and sometimes I'm in there, and a lot of the time it's at 3 in the morning, and I don't always answer right away. So keep that in mind. I'm not super active all the time because I forget my phone exists. Yeah. Sleep for 6 hours. Yeah, no, I'm legit just only posting at 3 in the morning. Well, I don't know why, but you're always on Discord. All right. I'm going to read chapter 14. Are we going to do that? What? Yeah, what? Oh man, don't try and stay awake too late. Yes, chapter 14. Sweet, we're gonna do that. Kitty, okay. We're gonna do this. Here we go. Yes, we're reading now. Chapter 14. In which needs must when the devil drives. Behind the carnival, the freaks gathered. Cabal had returned to the train for a chance to apply a hasty dressing to his wound and a quick change of clothes. He lifted the lid of the blanket box with the toe of his shoe, but Horst wasn't at home. Typical. Never around when he was needed. He dropped the lid with a bang and returned his attention to getting his thin black cravat just so. By the time he'd finished, they were waiting for him outside. Cabal stood on the topmost step and addressed the search parties. Good evening. We have two serious problems. Firstly, the carnival will cease to exist in little over an hour's time, and we are still one soul short of the target. Secondly, we have a man on the loose who knows far more about our business than is good for us, and, therefore, him. This man will cause trouble if he isn't located and dealt with as soon as possible. Mr. Bones. Yo, thin man waved from the back of the group. Has Barrow managed to get out of the grounds? No way, sir. We had a couple of peeks at him, but as soon as he sees us coming, he's out of there like a bat out of hell. He frowned. Never did understand that expression. They don't have bats in hell. Mr. Bones, said Cabal. A little focus, please. Bones focused. I got Joey on the main gate. Barrow ain't going anywhere. Good. Have you organized search teams? Sure have, two of them, Dolby, Hobie, and Colby from the Ferris wheel because they know what he looks like. Hold on. Who's running the wheel in that case? Oh, a couple of Maleficaris' old crew were handling that. Cabal paused. He didn't like leaving any of the former inmates of Brychester Asylum to their own convoluted devices unless absolutely necessary. At the Ferris wheel, the two men watched it spin endlessly. You see, said one, it never ends. Wheels within wheels, infinite angles. Yes, yes, Ouroboros incarnate, swallowing his own tail. Swallowtail, said the first. Where? Where? Excuse me, called a woman from the wheel. Could you possibly let us off now? We've been going around for about a half an hour and it's getting a bit boring. The lunatics ignored her. The circle is complete. Card 10, the Wheel of Fortune. 10, very, very significant. Yes, no. Isn't that 23? Cabal shrugged inwardly. They'd be all right. And the other team? Sorta, some of the things of the ghost train, we got Dennis and Denzel filling in while they're gone, Bones added quickly, anticipating Cabal's question. What we have here, said the skeleton driver of the hastily retitled Parapsychological Perplex Experience, is some sort of demarcation problem. Now, I wouldn't dream of turning up on the footplate of your locomotive. You're supposed to be behaving ghostily in there. He pointed into the shadowed entrance of the ride. Dennis and Denzel, firmly wedged into the tiny train at the head of the ride, followed the gesture, their necks creaking like new shoes. They turned back to the ghost train's driver and shook their heads. Squick, squick, squick. There was the faintest sound of something rolling around inside of Denzel's skull. All right, said the driver. You don't want to do this in a civilized way? We'll do it yours. Denzel and Dennis looked at each other and nodded triumphantly. Squick, squick, squick. Conga, called the driver at the top of the structure, the enormous gorilla automaton who sat on the top of the ride and threatened passers-by with a papier-mâché boulder. At least, the passers-by hoped it was papier-mâché, leaned over the parapet and looked inquisitively at the driver. Upside down, it looked a lot more threatening for some reason. I'm having a little trouble with these two, finished the driver, waving a thumb at Dennis and Denzel. The giant gorilla slid a contemptuous glare at them, bared its impressive fangs, and made a basso profundo growl that shook their teeth in their dry sockets. What was left of Dennis's and Denzel's eyes widened with much cracking of varnish. Those are the two parties, but we also got all these kind people and stuff who can just stroll around the place nonchalant like. Cabal looked at them and sighed. Most of them couldn't stroll if they had a handbook on the subject, never mind doing it nonchalantly. He also noticed that his gaze kept sliding over one part of the group. With a deliberate effort, he concentrated on the spot and finally noticed a small man who was so nondescript that even nondescript was slightly too exciting an adjective to describe him. "Who are you?" he asked. Everybody around the man tapped their chest in surprise, and it took a few moments of, "No, not you, beside you, on the other side. No, your other side," before the man realized he was the subject of attention. Interestingly, several others continued to look through the man in puzzlement as if he weren't there. "Oh," said the man in a soft, unaccented voice. "You mean me?" "Yes," said Cabal, working hard to keep his line of sight locked to the man. "Who are you? I don't remember seeing you before." "My name is Alfred Simpkins, sir. You were kind enough to take me in when my colleagues and I absconded from Ladestone Prison." "You're one of the murderers?" "Yes, sir." "One of the serial killers?" "Yes, sir." "So," Cabal looked at the pale little man with his hair combed across his bald patch, his little mustache, his little glasses, his cardigan, and cheap suit with the patched elbows. "What's your interest in this?" "You're looking for Detective Inspector Francis Barrow, retired, are you not? I saw him in the Hall of Murders earlier this evening, snooping, skulking." Some color almost came to his cheeks, and a couple of his neighbors finally spotted him and yelped with surprise. Interesting, thought Cabal. He's only easily visible when he shows emotion. Otherwise, he's too bland to notice. "He caught you, didn't he?" "Yes, sir. With your permission, I'd like to kill him." He said it in the same way others might say, "I'd like an extra pint and a carton of yogurt." "If you find him, you report it to one of the others. I want him alive." Cabal's thoughts were still on the last unsigned contract. "No personal vendettas. I've got a business to run." "Very good, sir," said Alfred Simpkins in a tone devoid of anything. Cabal cast his eye over the rest of the group before nodding with some little satisfaction. "Very good. You know who you're looking for? Find him. Dismissed." As they left, he sought out Bones. "Mr. Bones, have you seen my brother recently, in the last hour or so?" "Afraid not, boss. I seen him around. You want me to tell him you asked?" "Yes, if you would. Thank you." Barrow hid behind the waltzer and considered his next move. He'd already made one terrible tactical error by not getting the heck out of the carnival while he had the chance. He'd managed to convince himself that help could be found here, however, and that had been a big mistake. He hadn't seen a single person whom he felt he could trust to behave sensibly, or who wouldn't simply be put in too much risk. When he belatedly realized this, he'd headed for the exit, only to find an enormous character whose head seemed to be constructed from animated stone standing by the gate. watching those go home with close attention. Barrow didn't believe that he could hope to go up against the stone-headed man armed with anything less than an anti-tank rifle. A cursory examination of the fencing that surrounded the Cabal Brothers carnival indicated that he wouldn't be getting out that way either. 12 feet high and topped with razor wire. He'd assumed that the inward bend at the top was a mistake, that they'd put up the fence the wrong way around. After all, putting it up that way would be far better at keeping people in than out. Now he wasn't so sure it was a mistake at all. He was trapped, then. In that case, he had no choice but to stay hidden until daybreak. From what he'd seen on his previous early visit, most of the carnival's denizens weren't very keen on daylight. He'd watched a group of flickering dark things pass across the roofs and hoarding a few minutes later. Only the fact that he was out of the bright lights himself had made them visible. The townsfolk below had remained entirely unaware of the lightly tripping mob of nightmare that had passed only a few feet above their heads, shielded by the brilliant bulbs, neons, and fluorescents that made the darkness beyond so much deeper. Barrow looked back on the unpleasant feeling of foreboding that had been with him much of the day, the feeling that he had glorified with the word fear, and smiled. No, that had just been the collywobbles. Now he was afraid. They were throwing everything into the search, and that meant things that had only ever been catalogued in chained books and cathedrals, things that were a long way from the human monsters he'd spent his working life hunting and bringing to justice. Thinking of that helped him. Perhaps he could find some strength there by remembering the predators he'd pulled out of the crowd and thrown into a goal. He tried it. Smith, the insurance man who collected on a few too many policies for comfort. Yes, he could still remember the look on Smith's face when the verdict came in, like a spoilt child who'd been found out. Jones, the doctor who'd started to play God with his patients' lives and disposed of the ones he disapproved of. That had been difficult. Jones's had been assisting the inquiry as an expert witness, and it was the alteration of a piece of evidence that had made Barrow look more closely at his involvement. Ye gods, the trouble he'd had convincing his superiors to probe Jones's background more thoroughly. Brown, the hatter with the very private collection of bust he used to model his wares. If there had ever been a man to revel in his own insanity, it had been Brown. He'd actually become a hatter purely because of the association with madness. When he'd been sentenced, he'd asked to see his captor in private. There, as the Black Maria waited to take him away, he leaned close to Barrow and, laughing quietly to himself, whispered, "I'm not really mad. Only pretending. Only pretending." He was led away, making shushing noises at Barrow. It was to be their private little joke. And Simpkins, the man who killed because he could. They'd arrested him on 15 charges, and he'd quietly suggested in the interview room that there were 32 missing persons they might like to add to the tally. Barrow could still remember Simpkins in the dock while the charges were read, never showing a flicker of emotion, but seeming polite, if a little bored. "Do you plead guilty or not guilty?" Simpkins had pushed his glasses back up his nose, smiled slightly to show that he just wanted to help, and said, "Oh, guilty, obviously." In his interviews, he would only talk to Barrow and ignored questions from anybody else, even if Barrow was present. "Why is it so important that you speak only to me?" Barrow had asked finally. "It's very inconvenient." "Because you can see me, Detective Inspector Barrow. Other people start to lose interest after a while. You, delightfully, always see me." "I don't understand." "I've gone through life as a piece of marginalia, faintly written in soft pencil, passed by, overlooked, ignored. And it's been of great personal distress to me. I cannot begin to tell you how painful. Since childhood, I was always the last to be chosen, if indeed they remembered to choose me at all. Always considered the wallflower, though I stood full front and cried, 'Me! Me! Me!' Never loved, never despised, never anything to stir the emotions at all. Alfred Simpkins, the Invisible Man. After a while, it quite began to aggravate me. That's when I started making people take notice of me." "You started killing them?" "Yes, I did. Even that was a disappointment. I'd hoped for some sort of great emotion from those lives whose lives I took. After all, being murdered for no other reason, because a pallid little man, I am under no illusions as to how you perceive me, wants to prove a point, you would think it would make people angry at the very least. It would seem unfair, would it not? But all I ever got was faint expressions of surprise. I don't even believe they noticed I had murdered them. I really don't. They just seemed faintly put out, as if it were a bit of bad luck, an act of God. Oh, my carotid artery has been severed with an open razor. I knew I should have cut down on greasy foods. Botheration, I'm being delabored with the 14th century battle axe. What are the odds, eh? I was standing there in front of them with a submachine gun, or backing over them with a rotary cultivator, or whatever, and shouting, "I'm Alfred Simpkins! I'm killing you! Will you please take a little bit of bloody notice, please?" But they never did, so I kept going. Hope springs eternal, after all.
You knew you'd be caught, surely.
Well, one would think so, wouldn't one? Do you know, I've sat in my living room covered head to toe in blood, cradling the murder weapon in my hands, already labeled Exhibit 1, and been interviewed by your colleagues. Had I seen my next-door neighbor recently? Indeed, I had, a little under 3 hours previously, when I bludgeoned her to death with this very Knobkerry officer. Well, sir, we have other inquiries to make. Good day. They hadn't noticed. Nobody notices me, except you, Detective Inspector Barrow. You noticed me the first time you saw me. You knew I'd done it. Do you want to know what I'd like to do more than anything, Detective Inspector Barrow?
No.
I'd like to kill you. Barrow had looked at Simpkins hard. No animosity, simply because you would notice yourself being murdered. That would be my little bit of affirmation of my existence. Then I would never have to kill again.
Barrow had denied Simpkins' request and had not been diplomatic about it. Simpkins was sent down to Laidstone for so many life terms that even with good behavior, he was unlikely to be out before the next ice age. Simpkins' attitude towards him had changed then. It had become personal. Barrow paused, curious, and wondered why he was thinking about Simpkins just now, of all times. Perhaps it had been that little man he'd seen walk by in the crowd. He'd been the absolute living spit. The resemblance had just started all these thoughts rolling around his head, all of which was very nostalgic in a forensic sort of way, but it wasn't getting him any closer to finding somewhere safe and stopping Cabal. Stopping Cabal seemed very simple when it was only 2 words. The implications were horrifying in their complexity, however. Stop him how? Stop him from doing what? Stop him when? First things first, he thought. He broke cover. Walking like a man who has every right to be going into the back of a sideshow, he went into the back of a sideshow. I just need a dark corner, he thought. Somewhere I can... He paused, inhaled through his nose. What was that smell? An odd, synthetic, sour odor. He had a rapacious memory in that once a sensation had been experienced, it was held for good, and so he knew he'd smelled something similar before. Unfortunately, his rapacious memory hung on to the details, refusing to pass them on to the cognitive centers, and so he couldn't quite recall where. He twitched a curtain gently to one side and peered through the gap. What he saw rooted him to the spot. He was on the wrong side of the velvet rope that separated the visitors from an exhibit, if that was the right word. Actually, on this occasion, it was definitely the right word. Most definitely. Exhibitionism was the whole point here. On the far side of the rope, Barrow could make out the shadowy forms of paying customers. They clung to the area of low light, dim, flickering electrical faux candles showing only form but no detail, loath to be seen and identified. This was a place that many wanted to visit, but nobody wanted to be caught in. The reason for the guilty interest lay languorous and lithe upon a chaise lounge, regarding the gawking and sweating mass with an insouciance that slid easily beyond human limits. Since his conversations with the brothers Cabal this evening, it was as if the scales had fallen from Barrow's eyes. For example, he knew without hesitation as surely as Horst had known about Cleopatra earlier that same evening, that whatever else Layla the Latex Lady was, she wasn't a lady. She wasn't even human. There was something in the way that she moved, slowly and deliberately, and without apparent recourse to such human fripperies as joints, that was reptilian, yet still warmly mammalian, enough to provoke a low hum of sighs and wetting of lips from her admiring audience. The white noise of desire. Her skin was dark, dark gray, smooth and gently reflective like that of a young seal fresh from the sea, and as she moved it made a gently organic noise, surface whispering over surface. Barrow inhaled again. That was the sour smell. Rubber, and the slightly sweeter smell was talcum powder. She must get through pounds of the stuff every day, he thought. The smooth skin ran over every square inch of her body except her neck and head, which rose from the encompassing sheath like the painted portion of a gunmetal statue, and as he watched her, he realized without any particular sense of surprise that there was no clear interface between the rubber and the flesh. One simply seemed to merge into the other. The only details upon her body were the high heels that seemed to grow organically from her feet as if part of her biology, as indeed they were. No other detail was sharply delineated, not even her fingernails. Barrow was sorry for that. More detail would have allowed him to close down the whole carnival on public morality grounds. No such luck. Cabal wouldn't make a mistake like that. Still, he found himself wondering what kind of details they might have been. Her body was like something that Vargas might have dreamt on a particularly humid night. He clenched his eyes shut and told himself that there were people out there, and possibly in here, who would cheerfully see him dead, and a little bit of focus would be greatly appreciated. Layla watched the audience with an amused arrogance. A typical crowd, mainly men, with a few women, some of the latter asking themselves confused questions. She breathed in and tasted their pheromones, borne by the faint breezes that moved sluggishly through the sideshow. Their scent was fainter than usual. The wind was from the north, but she detected something else, and it was delicious. She found the chemical traces in the air and assiduously picked them out with the tip of her darting tongue to muttered approval from her admirers, then drew them along the roof of her palate as a connoisseur takes time with a fine wine. Fear. Somebody there was in fear of his or her life, and the taste of it was exquisite. She closed her eyes and allowed the flavor to separate into its components. Male, middle-aged, occasional pipe smoker. Behind her. She knew all about the search tonight and now knew exactly where Frank Barrow was. She also knew that she had less than an hour's existence left. Really, she should alert Johannes Cabal. That was the right thing to do. On the other hand, she had sprung from Satan's very own personal blood, and this meant that the right thing to do wasn't always the thing that was done. Let Cabal rage. She was going to have some fun. Barrow watched as Layla gestured to the bodyguard who stood to one side and whispered in his ear. "Right, show's over." He was bellowing at the audience even as he straightened up. "Ain't you got homes to go to?" His mind implied that if anybody didn't, then he knew a nice hospital that they could spend the next few weeks in as an alternative. With a collective sigh and many wistful glances, they filed out, followed by the bodyguard. The main door closed with a final click. Barrow didn't know whether this was a good thing or not. Layla, on the other hand, seemed to know very well. She rolled onto her back and straightened one leg and ankle, admiring the way the light reflected along her thigh, shin, and foot in a single, unbroken bar. She slowly turned her head until she was looking directly at Barrow. "Hello, Francis," she said. Barrow decided it was a bad thing, after all. He stepped back from the curtain and opened the rear door of his covert entry. Barely a few inches wide, the door was abruptly slammed shut from the other side, and he heard the lock turn. He rattled the door and heard a laugh. Then he heard the bodyguard say, "Have a nice time, Mr. Barrow," and walk away, laughing the whole while. Barrow was one of those people blessed with a mind that works faster under stress. It was working very rapidly now, looking for some sort of handle on Layla's likely personality, her possible behavior. In his uniform days, he'd have involved in a raid on delightful old-fashioned phrase, a house of ill repute. The girls, no matter what their age, they were always girls, had shown a certain ennui at the raid and sat down on the stairs, smoking and chattering amiably with the young and easily embarrassed coppers. Barrow had been struck by their marked lack of obvious sexuality, despite various stages of undress, leather hip boots and bullwhips, despite the girls in school uniforms, nurse uniforms, and confusingly, police uniforms. The house still gave the impression of just being a place of work. They rented out their time and their bodies and their theatrical skills, but that was all. He'd got talking to a tall brunette who wore a long peignoir over some article of clothing that creaked threateningly when she moved. She'd asked him for a light, and while they waited for developments in the raid, which seemed to have stalled for some reason, they talked about this and that, feeling fired by a faint moral indignation as he was, after all, a policeman, and still believed that his job was to act as society's conscience. He asked her why she did what she did. She had seemed nonplussed. Why do I do this generally? For the money, of course. Why do I do this specifically? At this point, she'd opened the gown, and before he averted his eyes, he caught a glimpse of something Byzantine rotten leather. Because I don't have to touch the gentlemen hardly at all. They do it all themselves, on the other side of the room, while I tell them how bad they've been. The hours are good, the money is excellent, and apart from the sheer tedium of it, it's the best job I've ever had. At that point, the chief constable of the district had turned up in his pajamas with a raincoat thrown over his top and demanded to know why the raid had been planned without him being told. The operation was stepped down in some haste, and they were all sent home. Interestingly, the tall brunette with the creaking lingerie seemed to know the chief constable by his first name, although she also called him Patricia at one point. Barrow somehow doubted that a filter tip and a friendly chat were going to endear Layla to him. He had to get out of here before she found him. He looked away the narrow corridor formed between the heavy curtains and the walls of the temporary building, hoping that the front door hadn't been as securely locked as the rear. He set off at a dog trot. He couldn't hear anything from the main body of the building and imagined her stepping directly into his path. What would he do then? He'd never hit a woman. Well, just the once. But she'd been bearing down on him with a chainsaw, and despite his reservations about Layla's status as a human, he didn't want to start now. He made the end of the corridor and broke cover without hesitation. Reaching the door in a few steps, he tugged at the safety bar. On the other side, a padlock and chain rattled mockingly. He felt a shadow on his back and spun around. He was alone. There was no sign of Layla. He didn't delude himself. There was no possibility that she'd gone. She was probably on the other side of the curtains herself, now looking for him. Fine. That gave him a few moments alone in the main part of the room. Overhead, he noticed something in the gloom that might be a painted-out skylight. It wasn't much, but he was running out of ideas as he stepped over the silk rope and looked a little closer. It was a skylight, but he doubted he could reach it even if he stood on the chaise lounge. Still, he wasn't doing anything else. He pulled the low couch a couple of feet to one side until it was directly below the blacked-out skylight, climbed onto it, and reached up. He was nowhere near. He tried jumping, but that didn't seem to get him any nearer at all. He paused. Something had bumped against the curtain. He crouched, concertinaing himself as small as he could get. He made himself aware of the muscles in his legs, imagined them pulling hard enough to catapult him up, imagined his hands reaching the catch and knocking it open, then another jump to get his hands on the ledge. Pulling himself up, pushing the skylight open with his shoulders as he climbed. He knew it would have been an impressive feat when he was 20 and wished he could be less rational about the danger he was in. He needed the homicidal strength of a man in mortal fear and fury, the strength of 10 he'd seen enough times to know that it existed. He looked up, willed the skylight to be nearer, and jumped. As his body straightened, the chaise lounge rocked treacherously under the impulse. Barrow forgot all about attaining the skylight and started concentrating on staying upright. The clash in priorities resulted in a low jump that knocked the chaise onto his side. He came down, lost his footing, and fell awkwardly. As he hit the floor parallel to the couch, it added insult to injury by rocking back onto its feet with a solid thump. Barrow lay winded for a moment before pulling himself into a sitting position and leaning against the chaise. This wasn't going well. He looked up and realized it wasn't even going that well. "Why, Francis, you've had a little accident. Let me..." She released the curtain and it fell to behind her as she took a step towards him. "Kiss it." Another step. Perhaps it was the angle, a skewed perspective, but she seemed to cover more ground with each step than was humanly possible. "Better." She was standing over him. He looked up at her as she brought the full power of her presence to bear upon him, and strange things started to happen in his brain. Parts of the reptilian brain that encompasses the head of the brainstem began to fire in odd patterns. Barrow almost gagged on a rising tide of thick, cloying lust, colored with the sort of pack behavior that makes "I was only obeying orders" a favored defense for war criminals the world over. Unreasoning desire and unquestioning obeisance, a winning combination for the more upper-class predator. Layla had been born perhaps 50 weeks before and would never see her first birthday. It didn't matter. She'd seen more in those brief months than most saw in a lifetime. Horst Cabal had found the parts that made her up prepackaged in a catering-sized coffee tin, labeled Layla, in one of the cars. He had taken the tin to Johannes and shown it to him. "Have you seen this?" he said, emptying the contents onto Cabal's desktop. Cabal had looked at the mess for some moments before asking, "Well, what is it?" "Layla the latex lady. I would guess from the label and contents. Remembered that board I showed you? She must have been one of the very few members of the carnival that they sorted out before the plug was pulled." "So, less work for you. Why should I be concerned?" "Why? Just look at this stuff, Johannes. I'm having second thoughts about animating her." Cabal had looked quizzically at his brother before taking a pencil and sorting through the mess. There was no rag and no bone. There were several rubber items in place of a rag, most recognizable, some less so. Cabal had located a small sheet of latex, perhaps 24 erasers, a few objects that he was glad hadn't been used previously, and a couple of others that had made him think some designers must have a difficult time explaining in polite company exactly what it is they design. For hair, there was a long, loose ponytail gathered into a knot at one end. He'd held it up to the light and marveled at the multitude of different colors. There didn't seem to be an analog for bone until Horst had pointed out a large tube of silicone gel. "Oh my," Johannes Cabal had said, otherwise lost for words, just for once. Then there had been the clippings. Held together with a treasury tag was a motley collection of old and yellowing advertisements for corsets, high heels, stockings. Farther in had been pages snipped from lingerie sections of more modern home shopping catalogs, photographs of public toilet walls covered in childish drawings, and closely written fantasy mimeographs of anonymous letters, detailed and disturbing. Cabal had coughed and put the items back in the tin. "People like that sort of thing. You said so yourself." "That's before I saw all this stuff. I had my doubts." "We don't have time for doubts," Johannes Cabal had said, cast the tin's contents on the floor, and invoked her then and there. Cabal had discovered early on that Layla was the carnival's star performer in most senses, and deployed her frequently, to great effect. He didn't like being anywhere near her, though. She appealed to him in a certain way, and Cabal didn't like being influenced at such a base level. For Layla was the very epitome, the very physical embodiment of guilty eroticism, the spirit of the peep show, the sly glance up the library stepladder, the thumbed postcards, the denied impulse, the addictively tawdry, the illicitly thrilling. Fortunes had been built upon it in dilution, concentrated in one form, lines drawn by 1,000 million fevered imaginations that topped with a face that was all things to most men in a fair proportion of women. The effect was nothing short of devastating. Men came to her, and afterwards they found that they had been lessened. Less dignity, less self-respect. The complex roadmap of an average intelligence was reduced to a one-way highway with no off-ramps and no U-turns in her presence. Everything became dangerously simple. Things were getting dangerously simple for Barrow right now. He looked raptly up at her. How had he ever thought that her skin was featureless when, wherever his eyes fell, detail bloomed? Anatomical, perfect, titillating, and quite mesmerizing. The higher centers of Barrow's mind, his ego and superego, were aware that all was not well and were hammering on the bridge door of his mind. Unfortunately, the beastly Mr. Id wasn't receiving visitors today, so Barrow just sat there and trembled and sweated and breathed shallowly. There, said Layla, taking control as always. She slowly knelt astride him and took his head in her hands. He had the faint sensation of her nails dimpling the skin at the back of his skull. How could she have nails? Her hands were coated in latex, weren't they? Barrow's superego was standing on his ego's shoulders and bellowing through the air vent to the bridge. We are in big trouble unless you do something, you hairy oaf. Fight or flight. Fight or flight. Id wasn't listening naturally. He just sat in the captain's chair with an unseemingly tent in his jockey shorts and looked foolishly deep into Layla's eyes, perfect pools of enchanting quicksand from which few escaped. Barrow couldn't move as her lips parted and she bent forward to kiss him, even when her mouth deformed elastically, but oh so artistically. He just sat there and waited for whatever she had in mind. Even when her lips settled across the bridge of his nose and the base of his chin, encompassing everything in between, he only distantly wondered where you learned tricks like that. They stayed like that for a few moments as he breathed her breath and remembering having a tooth out under gas when he was 7. Her tongue played across his lips and playfully tickled his nostrils, and then with a powerful spasm that ran from her throat to her abdomen, she sucked the air out of his lungs. She was tired of fulfilling human fantasies. She just wanted to kill somebody for a change. Barrow's brain snapped into working order, albeit a little late in the day to do any good. He grabbed her hair and pulled back frantically, beat at her head with his balled fist, tried to break her grip somehow, all in vain. She was strong as sin, very literally. As he struggled and fought, she didn't move a muscle, just looked into his eyes with a cool, alien satisfaction as she waited for the life to leave him. He could feel himself growing weaker as his lungs tried to drag some little vitality from the thin dregs of air that were left to him. The room was becoming less distinct as tunnel vision constrained his sight closer and closer to a full blackout, unconsciousness, and death. His fist struck feebly and erratically against her. It felt like punching a tire, and the thought made him want to laugh, but he couldn't, and he wondered if that was to be his last thought, and hoped not, because he wanted his last thought to be of Leonie, and who was going to look after her when he was gone, although obviously she was an adult woman, and isn't it dark? An adult woman, and Codwaller, Memphis, Divot, Spigot, Ollie Oxenfree. Barrow's brain regretfully closed down all verbal functions and awaited the moment when it would have to close down everything else. And you only appreciate fresh air when you've been cooped up indoors in a tire factory all day, although there's still a faint smell. And what are you staring at? Barrow's vision blurred and cleared. He was still staring at Layla's face, and she was still looking at him, but the orientation had changed. And Layla's eyes looked vaguely disappointed somehow. Suddenly, he remembered that she was trying to kill him, and he ought to get back to fighting her. He punched out at her body, but his hand met no resistance. He tried slapping at her face, and unexpectedly, she let him go. Just like that. His faint but appreciative surprise increased by several magnitudes as he watched her head bounce away from him and come to rest some feet away. He cried out and pushed himself away from it until he came up against the chaise lounge. He looked around frantically, trying to reorientate himself, panting. He was still in the sideshow, still on the floor. Layla's head lay some feet away, grimacing slowly, while the other side of her decapitated body was still on its knees, writhing. Behind it, a nondescript little man with what looked like a bread knife in one hand scrubbed ineffectually at the great quantity of colorless, clear slime that had covered much of the front of his jacket. "Oh, dear," said the man conversationally when he noticed Barrow looking at him. "I don't think this is going to come out." "Hello, Mr. Simpkins," said Barrow hoarsely. "Hello, ex-detective Inspector Barrow," said the man, and continued scrubbing at the stain. "You know you get used to bloodstains, but this is a new one on me." He indicated Layla's disparate parts. "I didn't actually intend to behead the young lady, incidentally, just cut her throat. But there was nothing to her at all. Once the blade had cut, I hesitate to call it skin, it just kept going. Like slicing German sausage, and pop, off comes her head, which would have been gratifying in a professional sense, but then all this dreadful goo came spraying out. Geysers of blood I'm used to. You just brace yourself for it as a necessary unpleasantness, like going to the dentist. But this," he nodded gravely as if communicating a great discovery, "I doubt it's natural." "What now, Mr. Simpkins?" asked Barrow. Simpkins cocked his head quizzically. "You said you were going to kill me one day. Is that today?" "Oh, that old thing," said Simpkins dismissively. "I saved your life today, ex-detective Inspector Barrow. In some cultures, that means your life belongs to me. Why should I kill you now? Why take what's already mine?" "A nice thought, Mr. Simpkins, but relevant only if you subscribe to one of those cultural views. I'm not sure you do." Simpkins laughed, a suppressed sniffing noise. "You're quite right, of course. Always the detective? No, I was still intending to kill you, but I don't think I shall now." He held out his hand with 2 fingers extended in a V for victory salute. "2 reasons. Firstly, having saved your life for admittedly selfish grounds, I was determined that if anybody was going to kill you, it was going to be me. It seems almost churlish to then go ahead and take it. But secondly, and for me far more pressingly, you remembered me. I don't know if you recall, but as soon as you could talk, you said, 'Hello, Mr. Simpkins,' which was touchingly polite in this day and age. Very civil. You remembered me, and I have no doubt you will always remember my little part in your rescue here." "You can rest assured on that count," said Barrow. "Rescued from a synthetic succubus by one of the world's most notorious serial killers." No, he wasn't likely to forget that in a hurry. "You're precisely the sort of person, indeed, the only example to date, the sort of person that I want to preserve. I would as soon kill myself as you. I'm not the suicidal sort, by the way." "You were hiding in the Hall of Murderers, weren't you?" "Yes, that was me, with the card pinned to my jacket calling me Albert Simmons, among many other inaccuracies." "So Cabal's sheltering the Ladestone escapees, is he?" "Oh gosh, yes. We outnumber the waxworks." "Why?" Why, for the price of our souls. I'm an atheist, so it was no great loss to me. He looked at Layla's corpse, which was slowly deflating and puddling into odd, irregular forms. At least I was an atheist. Besides, we were all hellbound long before we signed his forms, so it's still 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Forms? Asked Barrow. He had forms? Oh, yes, I read mine before I signed. The others didn't. A mixture of illiteracy and relief to be out in the open, I think. Rather nicely drafted, although peppered with archaic terms. Still legally binding, though. The bearer has all rights to the signatory's soul on the occasion of his or her death. Probably quite standard if you happen to be working for Satan, I would think. Look, Mr. Simpkins, you even remember to pronounce the P. Bless you, ex-detective Inspector Barrow. I need to find those forms and destroy them. Will you help me? Me? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm no action man. But, and I hope you'll forgive me for bringing this up, you can go unnoticed where I would be spotted. Simpkins shook his head with clear regret. Not here, I'm afraid. That's how I first gathered that there was something amiss in this carnival. Lots of the staff notice me, although if this young lady is anything to go by, they notice me precisely because they're not people at all. In fact, the less like people they appear, the more likely they are to spot me. No, I'm afraid I can't offer any direct help. If you would value my opinion, though, you might do a lot worse than examine the desk of Mr. Johannes Cabal. It's in the office car of the train. He looked at the knife. I don't suppose I'll be needing this anymore. He dropped it to the floor and watched it clatter into silence. He smiled. That was easier than giving up smoking. Good evening, ex-detective Inspector Barrow. Good evening, Mr. Simpkins, said Barrow, and watched him leave via the rear door. He gave him 2 minutes and then followed, stepping over an odd collection of rubber knickknacks and yellowed magazine clippings and picking up the discarded bread knife en route. The rear door had been unlocked with the key. Nearby was a bone wrapped in rag and hair and liberally smeared with fat and beefcake. Barrow guessed that Simpkins had caught the sideshow bodyguard unawares. This was an odd place, but he was finally beginning to understand its rules. He checked his watch. 11:20. He set off for the train. And that was chapter 14. And now we only have 2 more chapters left, so it's literally one more Tuesday, and we're done with the whole book. That is the end of the chapter. I told you it was a cliffhanger. You're gonna be so mad. Yeah, no, for real. Yeah. Legit, that was the end. Oh, really? Thank you. I like Simpkins too. Yeah. Yes. The next full book we're going to read is going to be Johannes Cabal the Detective. That is book number 2. So if you want to go ahead and pre-order that, you can do it because it's a good book. And that's going to be the next official book. We have a couple short stories we're going to read in the interim, so you have a little bit if you want to get it in advance, or you need to wait on getting the book for a little bit because of money, I don't know. But if you need to wait a little bit, the next couple weeks we're going to be reading some short stories to catch up on stuff. Off topic, but my smile is pretty. Thank you. And you remember to buy the second book as well. Yeah. Yeah, the second book is... I love the way the second book starts. It's one of my favorite ones that starts... because it just jumps right in. Like, if you thought the first one was pretty abrupt, where he's, it's just like, Johannes Cabal's going to hell. Like, the second book, just equally right out the gate. Just stellar openings every single time.
You were falling asleep? I know. Like I said, my favorite book series of all time. So I'm glad y'all are liking it. It makes me feel validated because anytime I would bring it up, no one ever had read this of their own volition before, you know? And like, you know that thing where you recommend like books to people and they never read them? Almost every single time that happens, I'm like, I give people a book recommendation, they never read it. And which is crazy because I'll take any recommendation as long as it seems like it's a good read. Like, if you're describing something and, you know, it has to if it's a fantasy or horror novel, I'm almost guaranteed to read it for you. I've probably already read it if I haven't, you know? So, but I would give people book recommendations and no one would read. And then, so everybody's clearly loving this. Boss saw you told him it was story time with Toshi. Hi. Tell your boss, I said it's fine, you're taking a break. Also, they should give you a raise. Thank you. Yeah, see, T-Galaxy, me and you are of the same mind. Because if someone is, like, if someone advises I read anything to do with death, any horror novel, any high fantasy novel, I will read it. Anything to do with space, I'll read it. I'll read almost anything fiction as long as it's not just like direct hetero rom-com for no reason. Like I don't like romance stories a whole bunch. Depends. If they're period pieces, I can work with it. The thing is, I'll read almost anything at least once. To be read, I won't forget it's there. I don't. Honestly, I'll do that with stuff I pick up. Like, I'll buy a bunch of new shit and then I won't read it. But if someone's like, hey, you should read this book, I will absolutely read it. Especially if they know what my tastes are and they're like, it's a really fucked up horror novel. It's got a lot of gore in it. Do you like surgical stuff? And I'm like, you know I love surgical stuff. And they're like, you should read it. And then I'm like, yes, you get me. And then I'll read it. The Hills Have Eyes. Romance had to be secondary to the plotline. Yes, exactly. That's my thing, is if there's romance, secondary. I like that. But that can't be the whole plot for me. I get bored. Maybe that's my, like, asexual tendencies. I don't know. More than 100 books. You should see, I have 2 bookshelves in here. It's not even all of the bookshelves I have in the house. And it's also not even all the books, because we have too many books to fit on all the bookshelves. And we have books just hanging out in the garage. So, I don't even know if I don't know if you can see it. Hold on. I can't swap the camera around on here. Oh. There's one bookshelf. That's just one. I have more in the living room. They're completely filled, both of them. They're completely filled. And I have more in the garage and just cardboard boxes. Just too many books. I think I still... No, I don't think I still have a copy. I think I loaned that out. But yes, I have read Never... Yeah, I did. I was literally we watched a movie where I was like, those look like Quetzals, and they were like, what is that? And I'm like, it was a monster from a book I just read. And they were like, and Danky was just like, what fucking book did you read that you didn't tell me about? And he was like, was it fiction? And I was like, yeah, obviously. And he was like, I need to know about the book. So I was like, I had to go stop the movie It was at the tail end of the movie anyway, but like I was just like I had to go rifle in here for this mystery book that I read like a couple weeks ago and was like, I found it. Like 200 physical books and a few thousand Kindle. Yeah, I had more on my Barnes & Noble account at one point, and I don't really know what happened to all of them. They just disappeared one day. So I had books from years ago that was just like, where every single one of the Percy Jackson books? Where did they all go? I know I had them and now they're gone and they weren't archived. His Majesty's Dragon. I think I have that up there. Now that you mention that, because I have it on the bookshelf. Because I've got it as part of a subscription and I haven't read it yet. Because I was busy reading a recommendation that Denki gave me. If someone gives me a recommendation for something, I will read it. But anything that I get to myself is likely to be put on the back burner. I don't know why I do that. And I also read nonfiction, mostly psychology and like death stuff. I just finished like The Art of Dying and The Good Death. And then I have I like Mary Roach too. I just read Spook and that was good, which was a little bit different. It was more like about the metaphysical reality of dying. Anyway, whatever, it's fine. Have you read the Harold Voldemort series? I have not read that, no. What's that about? Give me the lowdown. You know there's a bunch of music for the Harold of Voldemort? I gotta know what this is. Is it a series? What's it about? Give me the lowdown. It sounds high fantasy, and I love high fantasy. You just made a book rec chat. Thank you, Finn. You are on top of it today. I actually meant to ask you that a few days ago, and then got caught up doing stuff because I was working. And then when I actually had free time, forgot what it was that I was going to ask you. And now I just remembered that was it. I'll have to look it up. It's fantasy with unicorns. Awesome. Stellar, by the way. Love it. But yeah, I read, I was reading Outpost, which, good story, kind of sexist. I don't know. I get a weird vibe, like very like women written by men kind of thing, but it was a good plot. I will say, I kind of want to know what happens, and I want to get the second one, but I'm also like, I don't like you as a writer. Anyway. There's like 50 books in it. Ah, sweet. Okay. Oof. I have considered reading an old book for, like, at some point. I don't know if you'd be interested in it. I've gotten a couple suggestions as to what to read after this. So I'm not sure if you want me to take a suggestion or not, but I had another book series that I was lining up to read after this one, just in case nobody could think of anything like that they super wanted to hear or do. And it's called, well, the first one is called On a Pale Horse, and it's part of a series. And it's kind of like fantasy meets futuristic supernatural. Which is fun. Guy becomes the Grim Reaper. And it's fun. It's fun. Anyway, I don't know if that would be of interest to anyone. It's of interest to me. But I'll read anything. But I really like that book. It is it's a little bit older or dated of a series, but
Lackey is writing the pen. Sweet. I'm going to have to look that up because 50 plus books in a fantasy series for me, oh, I thought I hit the jackpot as a kid when I read the Shannara series. This sounds like an amazing book. It is. It's part of a series of like 6. So it's fun. I don't want to give the entire pretense away because I feel like if we do read it, it'll be really fun for you to not know the entire thing about it. But it's done in a really interesting way and I love it. 2 book recs in the chat. Yes. I like how I'm already making plans beyond this series as though there isn't 5 more books in the series. Like, we're not going to be doing this until the end of time. We gotta come up with a backup plan for when TikTok tanks as a platform, you guys. Because, by God, this might outlast TikTok. Voldemort books are typically grouped in 3s or 4s. Yeah, have you read the Cinder series? It's pretty good. I've not read the Cinder series. List all the books I haven't read in the Zoom meetings. Yes! Love your style. We'll just Zoom it. It's gonna be fun. Discord. Yeah, we can. We can do calls on Discord. Heralds has a bunch of problematics and they don't have triggers. Oh, okay. Thank you for warning me. The only real thing I'm real iffy on is like grotesque sexual assault and just excessive animal violence. Like, I'm fine with gross stuff most of the time, but if it's like a really aggressive sexual assault, I have problems. And if it's like animals exploding in microwaves or something, okay, that might be pushing it. Okay, cool. Great news. Violence I'm fine with. I read all of Game of Thrones. It's fine. Or A Song of Ice and Fire, technically. Game of Thrones is just the first book. Everybody just calls it Game of Thrones. I already made a backup general thingy. Nice. Excellent. Way to go. You're on top of it. There is implied in one. Okay. Yeah, as long as it's not explicit, then I'm fine. Animals in the microwave. Yeah, okay, look. I read a lot of horror novels. I read a lot of horror novels. And you know what? I'd like to think that we've moved beyond that as a trope. But Secret Window still gets me because of the dog. Anyway, whatever. Yes, I did, actually. That's why I said it was a little bit dated, not to insult you, lady. I'm around the same age. The thing is, so it's not too bad. I just love that series. Look, let me enjoy things. I want to let the internet enjoy things with me. If they want to. They don't have to. You don't have to. Oh, yeah, of course. I'll always read to you. Glad you could stop by. I hope your food is good. Yeah, we're old, man. We're inappropriately older than you. No, I'm joking. God, this coffee's cold. Yeah, I'll probably be heading out soon, but... Well, yeah, we're not that much older than you. Oh, man. You had to Google what these were. I hope that helped. No. All right.
You're making me feel older than I am. Like, I'm not that old. Me and Lady Eve are not that old. Like, stop. The other day, we were getting ready to watch a movie, and it was kind of an old movie, and we had to rent it on Amazon Prime because it wasn't available on streaming. And Dave was like, I hate renting movies that just like cost money, that I own the movie. And I was like, it's on VHS. It's on VHS, and Denki's over in the corner like, yeah, I mean, but like still, how would we play that? How would we play that? So we ended up having to rent a movie that we own on VHS. I don't even know where it would be at, in all honesty. That's how long. We don't have a VHS player anymore. Nobody has a VHS player anymore, but I had a VHS copy of The Breakfast Club for the longest time, and I was like, what am I gonna do with this? Oh yeah. That's a problem, right? There are like kids like that don't know what a VHS player is, and I'm not gonna be one of those people that's like, these idiots don't know what a VHS. That's good because they were bad. They would show up all the time, and to be honest, you don't need to know. You've evolved. You're doing a great job. Oh, I know you can. The problem is, one, I would have to go out and find someone, probably at like a used, probably either, I wonder if Goodwill probably have one. But I'd have to go out, find a VHS player, not even be convinced that this VHS still works, or the VHS player still works. You run into that with record players all the time. Be Kind, Rewind. Yeah, and that's the thing, is rewinding it was always the worst. I remember the first time I had a VHS croak on me. It was Power Rangers, and I was rewinding that shit. And it just stripped, you know what I mean? And then the build-up tape got around, and then I took it out, and I tried untangling it and doing that thing with your pinky where you stick it in the thing and you move it backward, Yeah. And upsetting. I'll say that. Thank you. Most of it is actually just my regular makeup at this point. Yeah, I lost Power Rangers when I was a young boy. No, it was terribly traumatizing. I was upset. I really liked Power Rangers at the time. I know, it was actually a hate crime. I was gay as hell. I'm back on the Selena movie. I feel that the pain of losing a whole VHS. Oh my god! I remember. Do you guys remember taping over shit? Like, okay, you get like a video you don't care about, but probably matters to someone else, but you're not going to tell them that you did this, and then you you put tape over the space, right? And then you pop it in and you record something over that. I used to do that with Witch Hunter Robin. That's why it's probably one of my favorites, because I have big nostalgia hardcore, because I would tape over it and then record Witch Hunter Robin over like football games that my stepdad had recorded. Oh, thank you for the crown. I appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, bye, Lady Eva. But yeah, I recorded over like football games, and I think I recorded over like half an actual movie one time, like a rom-com that my mom had. They didn't realize it for a long ass time either. But then when they found out, I didn't even remember that I had done it by the time that they had found out. And they were like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Well, that's strange." You refuse to leave until you end it. Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna leave here in a minute. I gotta go eat more crab rangoon. No. But yeah, all the older peeps recording over VHS tapes is a big nostalgia trip for me. I used to do that with Witch Hunter Robin and Inuyasha specifically. Crab rangoons, yes. Dinky woke up today and chose chaos and was like, "I'm only eating if it's crab rangoon." And we were like, seems sus. No, I still have to download that. Mostly because I've been super busy. I don't play a whole lot of stuff. I've been editing, recording for a while. That's why Chapter 3 is up on YouTube. Chapter 3 is up on YouTube. The recording kind of gets a little iffy halfway through because I had to suppress dog noises in the middle of it. But you know what? Sometimes you work with what you have. Watch it with my brother is secret because your mom didn't want you watching it. Oh, really? Kagome was your first cosplay? Oh, that's cool. I remember Inuyasha. I am always busy. I don't know how to... Funny story, I don't know how to relax. If I'm not trying harder or mastering something, I don't know what I'm doing. So, like... I legitimately don't... Even my relaxation time is like, I have to work harder. Like, I don't know why that is. Well, I do kind of know why it is. It's because everybody had such low expectations of me that I had to make high expectations for myself. She was unaware what they were. Haha, that's awesome. Yeah, same thing. If I'm not doing something, like, even my relaxation thing is like work. Like, I'll set like mini deadlines for myself. Like, I'm like, I have to finish this book in a week. It shouldn't take longer than a week. If it takes longer than a week, you're not trying hard enough. And I'm like, what? Why would I gatekeep a book like that for myself? Seems sus. Same thing, I'll knit something or something, and I'm like, you should be able to finish this hat by the end of the day. Shouldn't take you longer than a day to make a hat. You want to make a hat? It takes a day. No. Stop. And I'm like, why are you like this? Elfin that's a good one. That's the time you're supposed to use to sleep. Thanks. I appreciate that. That contributes. Thank you. I appreciate that. I keep revamping his makeup all the time because I can't sit still. It has to be the best. I think this is peak though. This is probably my favorite makeup style that I've done for Shinzo, so I'm appreciating it. I think I'm gonna keep this one until I get lost again and I do it some other way. I can't stay the same. I have to constantly be evolving. Oh, same. I have fan fiction that I've been working on forever because it has to be perfect. Like, I have a whole notebook. There's a whole notebook of almost fully finished crap that I just haven't posted. I'm like, no, I gotta edit that again. I have to go through it again. No, that's not right. I have to redo it. Yeah, happy almost birthday. What the hell?
That's awesome. That's personal. I'm not going to ask personal questions. Okay. See, I will. I'll write out a whole outline, fill it out, and then afterward I'm like, I gotta go through and edit this. And then I'll rewrite the first chapter. And then I'm like, and then I'm like, I can do it better. And then I'll rewrite the entire thing. And then afterward I go to edit it back, and then I do the same thing over and over and over again. It's just me editing the entire thing over again. Thank you. So yeah, it always has to be better with me. I'm like, I'll just work harder. If it's not where I want it, if I'm not satisfied, if I'm not proud of myself, work harder. Blood Sea is a good anime, yeah. You end up with a whole different story at the end. Oh my god, I cannot tell you how many times I've done that. I'll start out writing a thing and then I'm like, okay, but wouldn't it be better if this idea? And then I'll rewrite the entire thing as a whole other idea. And I'm like, what happened to the original plot of the movie? What happened? I have to go too, actually. So that's also not beyond the pale. But I'm glad you could show up. I'm glad you're enjoying the book. Well, now you had a whole horde of people tell you happy birthday, and I hope you do have a happy birthday. And I get it. I do. So, bye. I gotta go. I'm gonna go eat more crab rangoon and chillax with Denki for a little bit. So y'all have a great night. You have a happy birthday, and I will see you next Tuesday for the end.